Outpost Kestrel was a graveyard where ships came to die, and people forgot to leave. It clung to the edge of the TRAPPIST-9 sector, like a fungal growth on a dead star's ring system. A lumpy agglomeration of welded-together freighters, hollowed-out asteroids, and skeletal docking arms. The station's air smelled of ozone, unrecycled protein, and cheap, synthetic alcohol. It was a haven for the desperate, a black market for the unscrupulous, and the last, best place in the galaxy to disappear. Ari Mercer fit right in. He was just another shadow in a station full of them. A man whose official record was a masterpiece of bureaucratic beige. His listed profession was salvage technician, grade 4, which was a polite way of saying he flew a tow truck. His ship, the Mothwing, was a perfect reflection of his forged identity, a long-haul freighter tug. Its hull, a patchwork of mismatched plates. Its engines quiet and modified for low signature runs. It was ugly, reliable, and, most importantly, invisible to military-grade sensors. Ari was guiding the Mothwing through a particularly dense cloud of debris, the remnants of a cargo skirmish from 3 months prior. His magnetic grapples hummed as they attached to a shattered reactor casing. Inside the cockpit, the light from his console painted his face in shades of green and amber. He looked like a man in his middle years, though the weariness in his eyes suggested he had lived far longer than his appearance let on. "Easy, girl," he murmured, his hands barely touching the controls. The ship responded with a smooth, practiced elegance, the grapples cinching the massive piece of junk without a single shudder. This was his life now, hauling scrap for pennies on the credit, keeping his head down, forgetting. He was good at forgetting. He had forgotten the roar of a starfighter's engine under full combat thrust. He had forgotten the crystalline, terrifying beauty of FTL space, seen not through a viewport, but felt as a sixth sense, a river of impossible data flowing directly into his spine. He had forgotten what it was like to be part of the Aegis Warden Project, a top-secret human initiative so advanced it bordered on the mystical. The Wardens were few. They were pilots whose nervous systems had been permanently synchronized with a non-directional guidance algorithm. They did not navigate faster than light travel. They felt it. They could read the chaotic, invisible currents of hyperspace, ride the solar tides, and slip through gravitational eddies that would tear a normal navigator's calculations to shreds. Ari had been the best of them. Until the disaster. Until the incident at Cygnus Delta. When his entire squadron had been swallowed by a ripple in space-time he should have seen coming. He had been the only survivor, and he had been running ever since. The Volari Dominion did not know he existed. The human commercial blocks, in their infinite, fractured weakness, had long since listed him as missing, presumed deceased. That was how he liked it. The currents were silent out here. The noise in his head was gone. There was only the rumble of the Mothwing's engines and the next meager paycheck. He was locking down the reactor casing when the universe tore open. It was not the polite pinprick of a standard FTL translation. This was a violation, a raw, violent expulsion of energy that screamed across every sensor on the station. Kestrel's proximity alarm shrieked, a chorus of digital panic. Ari's blood went cold. He did not need to look at his long-range scanner. He already knew. He felt it not in his spine, but in his gut. A presence so vast and self-important, it warped the very fabric of local space with its arrival. He looked up through the cockpit's armored glass. The Crimson Crown had arrived. It was a Volari dreadnought, a Blade-class warship so large it eclipsed the stars behind it. Its hull was the color of dried blood and polished obsidian, its lines both elegant and brutal. It was the personal flagship of the new Empress, Saraxa, a vessel of conquest and absolute authority. It hung in high orbit above the junk heap station, a wolf staring down a rat. Throughout Kestrel's comm channels, chaos erupted, Smugglers cursed, refugees prayed, and the station's meager defense grid whimpered and died, overwhelmed by the ship's passive jamming field. Ari just stared, his hands frozen over the controls. The Volari Dominion, an interstellar empire built on two pillars, ancient, unbreakable codes of honor, and the overwhelming firepower to enforce them. They viewed the scattered mercantile human blocks as little more than disorganized, untrustworthy children. And they were here. A single, override signal cut through the static. It bypassed all station protocols, all private channels, and blared from every speaker, every comm unit, every tinny cockpit radio on the station. The voice was female, modulated, and utterly cold. It spoke in perfect, unaccented galactic standard. Ari Mercer, you will report to the Crimson Crown immediately. A shuttle is dispatched. Do not delay. The message ended. The silence that followed was heavier than the ship that had delivered it. Ari's personal comlink lit up. It was Ren, the station's docking master. Ari, what in the seven hells is going on? Who are... Ari, they are locking onto your ship. I see it, Ren, Ari said, his voice terrifyingly calm. A small, sleek Volari shuttle was detaching from the dreadnought's belly, descending with predatory grace. Tell them I am on my way. He shut down the Mothwing systems, the familiar, comforting hum of his ship dying, leaving him in silence. He unstrapped himself, grabbed his old, worn jacket, and walked to the airlock. The walk from his docking bay to the main transit hub was the longest of his life. Kestrel, which had been a haven of anonymity, was suddenly a stage. Every face turned to watch him. The miners caked in grime, the data runners with their flickering cyber optics, the refugees huddled by the nutrient vats. Their expressions were a toxic mix of awe, suspicion, and raw, naked fear. He was no longer Ari the scrap hauler. He was Ari Mercer, the man summoned by the wolf. He was the reason the sky had turned dark. He could feel their unspoken questions. What did you do? Why are they here? Are they going to kill us all because of you? He kept his eyes forward. The Volari Honor Guard was waiting for him at the primary airlock. Two of them. They stood over 8 feet tall, encased in gleaming, articulate armor that looked more ceremonial than functional. But Ari knew better. The Volari made no distinction between art and war. Their armor was both. They did not speak. One of them gestured with a gauntleted hand. The message was clear: come. He was escorted onto the shuttle. The interior was as austere and cold as the Volari voice. The flight up to the dreadnought was short, silent, and suffocating. As they burst from Kestrel's weak atmospheric shield and into the void, the sheer scale of the Crimson Crown filled the viewport. It was not a ship. It was a moving mountain range, a city dedicated to war. They docked in a vast, cavernous bay. The air was cool, filtered, and smelled faintly of metal and a spice he could not place. He was marched down corridors that were more like canyons, their walls carved with intricate, geometric patterns that seemed to shift as he walked past. Finally, they reached a set of massive, obsidian doors. They hissed open, revealing the ceremonial deck. It was a space designed to intimidate. Half open to the vacuum, shielded by a containment field that shimmered at its edges. It offered a god's eye view of Kestrel and the debris field below. Stars glittered like a cold, judgmental audience. Ranks of armored Volari warriors lined the bulkhead, their helmeted faces impassive, their ceremonial pikes held at perfect, menacing angles. And in the center, on a raised dais, stood the Empress. She was even taller than her guards. Her armor was a work of art, flowing black and crimson plates that followed the lines of a body built for speed and power. Her face was bare, a strong, noble visage with high cheekbones, skin the color of pale moonlight, and eyes as black as the void itself. Atop her brow sat the crimson crown, a jagged circlet of metal that looked less like a piece of jewelry and more like the talons of some great, fiery beast. This was Saraxa, Empress of the Valari Dominion, ruler of 112 star systems, commander of the most lethal fleet in the known galaxy. Ari was marched to the base of the dais. The pressure of a pike butt between his shoulder blades forced him to his knees. The armor plate was cold against his shins. He looked up at her. She looked down at him. The silence stretched. Ari could feel the weight of hundreds of Valari eyes on him, could feel the thrum of the ship's massive engines through the deck. Saraxa took one step forward. Her voice, when it came, was not the cold, modulated tone from the broadcast. It was rich, powerful, and amplified by the room's acoustics, echoing like a judgment. Ari Mercer, of the human vessel Mothwing. She took another step, descending from the dais. She stopped just in front of him, close enough that he had to crane his neck to see her face. She was a monolith of power and imperial right. She leaned down. The entire deck seemed to hold its breath. Her voice was now a whisper, a low, guttural rumble that no one could hear but him. Sparks! The word hit Ari like a physical blow, bypassing 20 years of scar tissue. It was a name he had not heard, had not thought, since the day he had fled his old life. His mind flashed back, an involuntary, vivid memory, not of a dreadnought, but of a cramped, dark cargo hold in the Mothwing. He had been running a supposedly empty medical supplies container, only to hear a scratching from inside. He had opened it to find a creature, small, half-starved, four-limbed, with great, terrified black eyes and patchy, silver-blue fur that seemed to crackle with static electricity. She had been a cub, a child, dumped in a shipping lane after a pirate attack, the sole survivor of a massacred diplomatic transport. He had hidden her for 6 months. She had been feral, terrified, and heartbreakingly intelligent. He had named her Sparks because of the static her fur gave off when she was frightened or happy. He had fed her his own rations, taught her to read human letters on a datapad, using energy sweets as rewards. He had treated her with a kindness he rarely afforded himself. Eventually, he had managed to get her to a neutral Valari outpost, leaving her with a cryptic note about her high lineage markings and vanishing before they could ask him any questions. He had saved a cub. He looked up, truly seeing the Empress for the first time. The set of the jaw, the shape of those black hole eyes. Sparks, he whispered back, his voice hoarse. Saraxa's expression did not change, but a universe of emotion seemed to pass through her eyes. She straightened, her regal mask snapping back into place. Her voice boomed once more. For the court, for the universe. The Valari Dominion lives by the ancient law. Among the oldest is the Rending K, the life debt. He who saves a bloodline from the void, he who offers sustenance when all is lost, forms a bond that cannot be denied. A ripple of shock went through the assembled warriors. Ari's stomach dropped. 20 standard years ago, Saraxa continued, her voice ringing with the force of prophecy. The royal line of Valar was betrayed. I was cast out, left to die in the empty dark. I was found. I was sheltered. I was fed by this man. She pointed one long, armored finger at Ari. He didn't know who I was. He acted not for gain, but from something else. By this act, the Rending K was forged, and by our laws, by the right of marking, the saved cannot be separated from the Savior. She turned, her gaze sweeping her court, daring any to challenge her. I, Saraxa, Empress of the Valari Dominion, last of the Fire Line, claim this man, Ari Mercer, as a candidate for bondmate. If the court had been shocked before, it was utterly stunned now. A human. A filthy, common human scrap hauler. As a candidate for the imperial bond, it was sacrilege. It was madness. Ari's mind, the one that used to calculate FTL jumps in microseconds, was now spinning, processing the political catastrophe she had just unleashed. This was not an honor. This was a death sentence. A tall, gaunt Valari in robes of severe gray stepped from the shadows. He looked ancient, his face a roadmap of wrinkles. Empress. His voice was like sand and old paper. The council must deliberate. This is without precedent. The precedent is the law. Elder Thal, Saraxa said, her voice sharp. But a human. Is what the law provides for, she cut him off. Ari finally found his voice. Your Majesty, he said, the words feeling like rust in his mouth. He started to stand, but the pike butts tapped his shoulders, keeping him on his knees. This is a mistake. It was a long time ago. No debt is owed. You, Saraxa said, her voice dropping to that dangerous, personal level again. Will be silent. She turned back to the court. The political implications are not lost on me, nor on the council. I am sure. She was right. Ari could see the trap a mile away. A perfect, Valari-crafted cage of honor and logic. If he, Ari Mercer, refused the honor, he would be publicly rejecting the Empress. By extension, humanity would be seen as rejecting the Valari. The story would be spun, see they let a royal child starve in a box. And now, when offered a bond, their representative spits on our law. It was the perfect pretext for war, a war of insulted honor that the fractured human blocks could never, ever win. If he accepted, he would be a human living in the heart of the Valari court, a target for every ambitious house, every political rival, every xenophobic fanatic who saw him as an impurity. He would be dead in a week. Saraxa had just pulled the pin on a grenade and handed it to him. You have 1 hour, she declared, her public voice returning. You will be given chambers to contemplate the honor you have been afforded. We will await your acceptance. The guards hauled Ari to his feet. He did not resist. He was escorted from the ceremonial deck, the massive obsidian doors hissing shut behind him, cutting off the stunned silence of the Valari court. He was not taken to a cell. He was taken to an opulent chamber, one wall of which was a massive viewport looking out over Kestrel. The furnishings were sparse but impossibly elegant. He was a prisoner in a gilded cage. He stood staring at the station, his home, his hiding place, now looking so small and vulnerable. He had been there for perhaps 15 minutes, his mind racing through impossible escape scenarios. When the door behind him opened, he turned. It was Saraxa. She was alone. The red and black armor was gone. She wore simple, flowing black robes. The fireclaw crown was absent. Without the armor and the ceremony, she was still tall, still imposing, but she was also recognizable. He could see the cub in her eyes. They are listening, she said, her voice quiet, unamplified. She gestured to the walls. Always, but they are not watching. Saraxa, Ari said, the name feeling strange. You cannot do this. You are starting a war, or you are getting me killed, or both. I am stopping a war, she said, her intensity palpable. She walked towards the viewport, standing beside him, though not looking at him. She stared down at the station. My court is difficult. House Karzul wants me to purge the border systems. They say the human blocks are weak, disorganized, and a threat to our purity. They are looking for any excuse, any insult. So you gave them one, Ari said, a flash of his old, dry humor surfacing. Me. I gave them a solution, she corrected, finally turning to look at him. Her black eyes were piercing. They want an insult, I will give them the opposite. I will give them the rending ke, an unbreakable bond. I will bind a human to the throne, and I will do it using the very laws they claim to cherish. That's insane, Ari said. They will kill me. They will challenge me. I am not one of you. You are his, she said, tapping the viewport. You are the man who saved her. She stepped closer. Do you remember sparks in the Mothwing? You thought I was asleep, but I watched you. You would plot star charts for hours. Your face so sad. You were hiding, too. He said nothing. You taught me the alphabet, she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. With those terrible, sugary, colorful energy sweets. 1 for A, 2 for B. You ran out by the time we got to P. You were a fast learner, he mumbled. You taught me H was for home, she said, her voice dropping. I did not have one. Not since they took mine. You were my home, Ari Mercer, for 6 months, in a cockpit filled with old wires and the smell of engine fuel. You were the only thing in this galaxy that was not cruel. She looked away, back to the stars. And now I have a throne, and it is just as cold as that cargo container, and they are trying to take it from me. The same houses that killed my family. They are using this station, this outpost Kestrel, as a test. They want me to burn it, to prove my strength. So, what, Ari asked. You make me your bondmate, and that stops them. It forces their hand, she said. It changes the narrative from war to union. It buys me time. It buys them time. She gestured to the station. And it paints a target on my back, the size of your dreadnought. I will protect you, she said, with such simple, terrifying conviction that he almost believed her. You protected me. Before Ari could formulate a reply, before he could explain that he was just a broken-down pilot, a ghost running from his own failures, the room was bathed in sudden, flashing red light. Klaxons began to blare, a sound far more urgent and piercing than Kestrel's pathetic alarms. A tactical display materialized in the air between them. A crisp, male Volari voice cut through the alarm. Empress multiple translations. 3 unidentified vessels. Human make, cruiserweight. They are on a burn course, weapons hot. They are positioning themselves between us and the outpost. The display zoomed in. 3 sharp, angular ships, bristling with railguns and missile pods. They were not Kestrel junk haulers. They were wolves, and they were boxing the Crimson Crown in, using the station as a shield. Syraxa's face hardened, the Empress returning in an instant. The fear he had seen in the cub's eyes 20 years ago flickered for a fraction of a second, then was gone, replaced by cold, hard command. She looked at Ari. Her voice was flat, all sentiment erased. Your hour is up, Ari Mercer. It seems your decision is now tied to the lives of everyone on that station. She strode to the door, which hissed open to reveal 2 armed guards. Bring him to the command bridge, now. The command bridge of the Crimson Crown was a world away from the Mothwing. It was a vast, multi-tiered amphitheater of dark, polished stone and holographic light. The air was cool, the silence broken only by the quiet chime of consoles and the crisp, low-spoken reports of the Volari crew. Every officer was encased in the same, sleek, black and crimson duty armor. They moved with an economy of motion, a terrifying, disciplined grace. At the center of it all, on a raised command throne that looked carved from a meteorite, sat Syraxa. She was already back in her full ceremonial armor, the fireclaw crown on her brow. She was no longer the cub, no longer the woman in the guest quarters. She was the Empress, and her bridge was a temple of war. The red alert klaxons were a sound, not a light, a deep, resonant thrum that Ari felt in his teeth. Propel to the bridge, the guard behind him announced. He gave Ari a final, powerful shove that sent him sprawling onto the polished deck at the foot of the command throne. Ari caught himself on his hands and knees, the impact jarring his wrists. He was a piece of scrap, delivered. "Status!" Saraxa's voice was a whip crack, cutting through the low hum of the bridge. A tall, thin Valari with silver bars on his collar did not turn from his console. "Empress, the 3 vessels are holding position. They are bracketing us. Kestrel Station is directly in their aft firing solution. And ours. They are using the station as a hostage," a female officer at the weapons console said, her voice tight with contempt. "A shield of the weak, as the texts call it." "I am aware of the tactic," Sub-Commander Saraxa said, her voice dropping to a dangerous chill. "Calculations for a clean engagement." "Negative, Empress," the tactical officer replied. "Any maneuver, port or starboard, still gives them a 55% chance of striking the station's primary habitat ring if we engage. They are sloppy. Or they are precise. They know we cannot return fire." Saraxa's armored fingers tightened on the arm of her throne. This was the trap. The perfect, Valari-crafted trap. If she fired and hit the station, she would be shamed. Her honor forfeit for killing civilians. If she did not fire, she was a weak-willed empress, held hostage by 3 trivial human ships. Ari pushed himself to his feet, rubbing his wrists. He looked at the main holographic display. It was a beautiful, 3-dimensional representation of the battlefield. The Crimson Crown, a massive, red icon, Kestrel, a lumpy, green and brown icon, and the 3 sharp, blue icons of the enemy. "It is not just a shield," Ari said, his voice quiet. The entire bridge crew, as one, stopped. Every head turned. The tactical officer, the one Saraxa had called Sub-Commander, looked at Ari with open disgust. "This is a restricted command deck. The Prebond has no voice here." "But he has eyes," Saraxa said, her gaze fixed on Ari. "Explain." Ari walked towards the display, ignoring the hostile stares. He was a scrap hauler. He was a ghost. But he was, and had always been, a pilot. And this was a pilot's problem. "It is a pincer of shame," Ari said, his hand moving to the console, but he stopped himself before he touched the alien controls. He pointed with his finger instead. "You are here. The station is here. They are here. Here. And here. They are not just using Kestrel as a shield against you. They are using it as an anvil." He traced the energy signatures. "This one," he pointed to the lead ship, "is the hammer. He will fire a warning shot, something high-yield but inaccurate, at the station. You will be forced to intercept it, to protect the station. The moment your shields flare to block it. My other 2 quadrants are exposed," the weapons officer finished, her eyes wide. "They will gut us. It is a suicide play, but a brilliant one." "It is not a suicide play," Ari countered, his mind finally clicking back into its old, sharp grooves. The years of rust were falling away. "It is a performance. They are not here to win. They are here to make you look bad. They will fire, you will block, and in the chaos, they will launch missiles at Kestrel and blame you for the crossfire. The Empress's recklessness doomed the station. You lose either way." "He is correct," Saraxa said, her voice flat. "This is a political assassination, not a battle." She turned to her tactical officer. "Find me an escape vector." "We are calculating, Empress. The debris field is too dense for a combat jump. Sublight thrusters are the only option, but they are too slow. They will force the anvil play before we are clear." "Your calculations are wrong," Ari said, shaking his head. The sub-commander's face darkened. "Human. You are in no position to—" "Your calculations are wrong," Ari repeated, louder this time. his eyes finding Syrax's. "You are reading the map. You are not reading the ocean." He closed his eyes. For one agonizing second, he shut out the bridge, the smell of ozone, the red lights, the hostile aliens. He let himself feel. For 20 years, he had suppressed it. He had drowned it in cheap alcohol and the mindless repetition of hauling junk. He had buried the Aegis Warden, but it was still there. It was not a voice. It was a sense, a feeling, like the currents of a vast, invisible river flowing through the void. Normal space was full of them. Gravitational tides, solar winds, dark matter eddies, and FTL space. FTL space was a raging, chaotic ocean of these currents, impossible to predict with sensors, only possible to feel. And right here, on the edge of the debris field, was a riptide. He opened his eyes. The weariness was gone. His gaze was sharp, alive. "There," he said, pointing not at the display, but at a patch of empty, black space between the ships. The sub-commander scoffed. "There is nothing there. The gravimetric stress is over 400%. A micro-jump there would tear the hull apart." "Your sensors say that," Ari said, his voice filled with a sudden, unshakable authority that stunned the bridge crew. "Your sensors are lying. They are reading the surface chop. I can feel the undertow. It is a null current, a clean channel, narrow as a needle's eye. But it is there. It will be rough, but it will hold. A null current. That is theoretical," the helmsman said, his voice hesitant. "It is real," Ari snapped. "And it is our only way out. We cannot run. We cannot fight. So we hide. We do a micro-jump slingshot. We ride that current, cut the engines, and let it spit us out. It is a tail-cut jump. We will drop out of FTL behind them before their sensors can even update." A silence fell on the bridge. The Volari officers looked from Ari to their Empress. It was insanity. It was suicide. It was impossible. "Empress," the sub-commander said, "this is folly. This human is—" "He has the con," Syraxa said, her voice absolute. The bridge froze. "Your Majesty." "Link him," she commanded. "Link his neural input to the navigation console. He will guide the helmsman. He has the con. Now." The sub-commander looked as if he had been struck, but he was a soldier. He nodded. Once. "Do it." A moment later, a console rose in front of Ari. A port opened, revealing a standard neural jack. He looked at it. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from need. He had not interfaced in 20 years. "Sparks." Syraxa's voice was low. For him alone. "Do not fail me." He nodded, plugged his temple port in. The universe exploded. The data flow of a Volari dreadnought was not the gentle hum of the Mothwing. It was a raging, sun-hot torrent of information. Shield strength, engine output, gravimetric readings, atmospheric integrity, weapons status. It all poured into his brain in a single, overwhelming flood. He gasped, his knees buckling, and through it all, he felt the ship. An engine, kilometers long. A heart, beating with the power of a contained star. And he felt the current, the cold, clean, beautiful line in the dark. "Helmsman," Ari's voice was a strained gasp. "Bring the engines to pre-jump status. Charge the field, but do not engage. On my mark." "This is madness," the helmsman muttered. "Do it," Ari roared, his voice suddenly matching the Empress's in pure command. The ship hummed, a vibration so deep it shook his bones. The red alert lights flashed faster. "On the display," Ari said, his eyes now closed, his body swaying as he rode the data stream. "The enemy is moving. The hammer is preparing its first shot. They are. Now. They are firing. 3, 2. Empress. He is right. Weapon discharge, high-yield plasma. Helmsman. Ari shouted. Full power to the jump drive. Now jump, jump, jump. The Crimson Crown did not move so much as it was flung. There was a sickening lurch, a feeling of being turned inside out. The stars on the main display smeared into streaks of white-hot fire. The entire bridge screamed, not with voices, but with the sound of a trillion-ton ship being forced through an impossible crack in reality. The noise was a physical thing, a fist squeezing the air from their lungs. Ari felt the current catch them. He rode it, his mind the only thing keeping the ship's FTL field from disintegrating. He felt the gravimetric stress, the 400% the sensor had read, and he pushed through it, finding the silent, cold center. And then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. A bone-jarring, stomach-dropping slam as the ship fell back into real space. The silence on the bridge was absolute. The crew was frozen, their hands gripping consoles, their knuckles white. The red alert was gone, replaced by the cool, ambient lighting. "Report," Saraxa said. She had not moved. She had not even blinked. The helmsman stared at his console, his mouth open. I do not believe it." "Report," Saraxa snapped. "We are clear, Empress," the tactical officer said, his voice shaking with disbelief. We are behind them. The maneuver was successful." The main display flickered, then resolved. It now showed the back of the 3 enemy ships. They were still in formation, still moving towards the Crimson Crown's old position. "They have not even noticed we are gone," the weapons officer whispered. "They are firing on a ghost." "Wait," the helmsman said, his voice rising in panic. "One of the vessels. It is coming apart." On the screen, the lead ship, the Hammer, suddenly wobbled. Its engine signature flared, turning a violent, critical red. A moment later, it simply disintegrated. It did not explode in a fireball. It was shredded, as if it had flown into an invisible wall of knives. It broke apart into 1,000,000 pieces of superheated shrapnel. "What was that?" Saraxa asked, her gaze locking on Ari, who was leaning heavily on the console, sweat pouring down his face. He unplugged from the port, the sudden silence in his head almost as painful as the noise had been. "The wake," Ari said, his voice hoarse. They flew right into our FTL wake, the riptide we created. We tore a hole, and they followed us right into it. An inferior engine. It could not handle the shear." "The other 2, the tactical officer said. "They are breaking formation. They are running. Their jamming field is flickering. Empress, I am seeing an insignia." He zoomed the display. On the hull of one of the fleeing ships, a patch of jamming static cleared, revealing a painted-on symbol. It was a stylized, black gauntlet, its fingers clutching a single, red star. A collective, sharp intake of breath came from every Volari on the bridge. "House Karzul," Saraxa whispered. Her voice was not angry. It was colder than the void. The crisis was over. The true conflict had just been declared. Hours later, the Crimson Crown was a place of simmering tension. The ceremonial deck was once again assembled. This time, there was no pageantry. There was only the grim, armored court, the tall Elder Marathol, and the Empress on her throne. In the center of the room, a 10-foot holographic projection flickered. It showed a Volari male, not in armor, but in the elaborate, flowing robes of a statesman. He was older, his face lined, but his black eyes were sharp and intelligent. He did not look like a warrior. He looked like a priest or a banker. This was Counselor Malgor Veshek, the undisputed, ancient, and powerful head of House Karzul. A terrible tragedy. Empress, Veshik was saying, his voice a smooth, oiled baritone. He sounded genuinely concerned. To see loyal ships of House Karzul, no doubt stolen by these treacherous human radicals, used in such a reckless attack, it is a sign of the growing instability on the borders, an instability that seems to follow in the wake of this human. He did not look at Ari, who was standing, uncuffed but heavily guarded, at the base of the throne. We must find who is responsible for this instability, Veshek continued, his emphasis precise. The Dominion is concerned. Your Majesty. First, this human is pulled from the mud. Then, a violent, unprovoked attack. The Council fears you are distracted. It was a masterstroke. He was not accusing Saraxa. He was concerned for her. He was twisting the narrative. She had not survived a trap. Her presence, her actions, had created the trap. Ari was not the bondmate. He was the distraction. Saraxa, let the silence stretch. Your concern, as always, is noted, Counselor Veshek, and it will be answered. She stood. Her voice filled the hall, amplified and metallic. The human is bound to me by the rending K. This is the law. The attack today, by your ships, stolen or not, was an attack on the law itself, to silence those who, like you, doubt the stability of this bond. I will invoke the trial of worth. If the court had been shocked before, this was a new level of disbelief. A collective gasp, a hiss of displaced air, filled the room. Even Elder Marathol's eyes widened. The trial. Veshek's smooth voice finally had a flicker of surprise. Empress. That is archaic. It is our way, Saraxa countered. He will be tested. 3 challenges, as prescribed by the ancient law. Combat, to prove his strength. Strategy, to prove his mind. And survival, to prove his will. If he succeeds, his place is confirmed by the gods, his worth made manifest. His bond to the throne will be legitimized, and the law will be satisfied. She leaned forward, her armored form, a vision of menace. And if he fails, the law will be satisfied in that way, as well. She looked directly at Veshek's flickering image. Are your concerns addressed? Counselor. The counselor's reptilian composure returned. He smiled, a thin, bloodless stretching of the lips. He had her. She had just walked into an even greater trap, and he knew it. Perfectly, Empress, he said, bowing his head. We shall all watch the trials with great interest. The hologram winked out. Ari was left standing in a room full of warriors who now had a legal right to kill him. This, Ari muttered to himself, is not going well. The next day, Ari found himself in a place that made the bridge seem friendly, the primary training deck. It was a cavernous room, the walls padded, the floor a shifting, semi-solid energy field. Waiting for him was a Valari who made the bridge guards look like children. He was easily 9 feet tall, and where Saraxa was sleek and royal. This male was a slab of granite. His armor was not the polished black and red, but a dull, functional gray, scarred and pitted from 1,000 conflicts. His helmet was off, revealing a face that looked like it had been carved from a block of wood with a dull axe. A fresh, livid scar ran from his jaw to his hairline. So, the Valari said, his voice a low rumble, like gravel in a steel drum. You are the prey bond. And you must be the welcoming committee, Ari shot back. The Valari did not smile. I am Captain Tarek Sora. I am charged by the Empress with your preparation. My preparation for what, my funeral? That is one likely outcome, Tarek said, his face impassive. You are smaller than I expected, and softer. And you are taller than I expected, Ari said, stretching his arms. And pointier. Are we going to talk, or are you going to, you know, prepare me? Tarek's smile was a terrifying brief baring of teeth. Prepare. What followed was not a training session. It was a beating. Tarek did not just defeat Ari. He dismantled him. He threw him, pinned him, disarmed the training staff from his hands, and generally used him to mop the energy mats. Ari was a pilot, and a good brawler in a station bar. Tarek Sora was a warrior master, the personal blade of the Empress. After a solid hour, Ari was lying on his back, gasping, every muscle screaming in protest. Tarek stood over him, not even breathing hard. Your reflexes, Tarek observed, are slow. He tapped Ari's ribs with his boot. Your form is non-existent. You fight like a drunken human. I am a pilot, Ari gasped from the mat, spitting out a drop of blood. My reflexes work best when I am sitting, and not being thrown by a walking tank. The Valari you will face in the ring, Tarek said, is named Kresh. He is a walking tank, and he will have a plasma axe, and he will not be preparing you. Good to know, Ari wheezed, rolling to his side. Get up, Tarek said. I am thinking, Ari said. Get up, Ari slowly, painfully, pushed himself to his feet. You know, this would be a lot easier if I just said no, refuse the trial. And doom your station to be the pretext for a war, Tarek asked, his voice genuinely curious. An interesting choice. You are just full of sunshine. Are not you, Ari said, picking up the training staff. The trick to Valari combat, Tarek said, suddenly shifting his stance, is not strength. Could have fooled me, Ari said, circling him. It is honor, Tarek said. He lunged, his speed impossibly fast, the butt of his staff stopping a millimeter from Ari's throat. Ari froze. We announce our moves. We dedicate our strikes. We are dramatic. Ari blinked. You are kidding. No, Tarek said, stepping back. Kresh will almost certainly shout, for the glory of the fifth house, or some such nonsense. It is very traditional. It is also very, very stupid. A flicker of humor in those dead eyes. It gives you half a second. When a Valari warrior is being honorable, he is vulnerable. Use it. Half a second, Ari said, a small, wry grin touching his lips. Got it. What about when they are not being honorable? Then, Tarek said, his own smile returning. You are already dead. He swung the staff, and the beating resumed. That evening, Ari was in his quarters, which were rapidly becoming his prison. He was submerged in a tube of regenerative gel, trying to soothe the symphony of bruises Tarek had inflicted on him. The door chimed. Go away, Tarek, he mumbled. I am marinating. The door hissed open. It was not Tarek. It was the ancient, gray-robed elder Marathol. He stood in the doorway, looking at Ari submerged in the glowing blue gel, with an expression of mild distaste. You must, Mara said, his voice like dry leaves. Get out. We must speak. 10 minutes later, Ari was wrapped in a robe, wincing as he sat on the edge of the cot. You impressed the bridge crew, pilot, Marathol said, his hands clasped in his long sleeves. You dismayed the court. I am full of surprises, Ari said, rubbing his shoulder. This trial, Mara said, ignoring the quip. It is a blade that cuts both ways. The Empress, in her haste, thinks to use it as a sword, to carve you a place in her world, to force the council to accept you. And when the law is not just a sword, Mara said, his old eyes sharp. It is a rein. It is a cage. Councillor Veshek understands this. He welcomed the trial. I noticed, Ari said. If you win, you legitimize this union. You become a legal person under Valari law. You will be untouchable, even by Veshek. The bond will be sealed. And if I lose? Ari asked. If you lose, Mara said, his voice flat. You prove Veshek's point. You prove the Empress is unstable, her judgment clouded by a weak bond. You prove that humans are inferior. You will not just be dead, Ari Mercer. You will be a fact. You will be the truth that Veshek uses to start his war. Marathol leaned closer. Veshek does not need you to die. He only needs you to fail. Do not fail. The old Valari turned to leave. Wait, Ari said. Mara paused at the door. Tell Saraxa. Tell the Empress. I accept. I will do the trial. Marathol nodded, as if this was a foregone conclusion. But, Ari continued, and his voice was no longer that of a victim, but of the man on the bridge. On one condition. You are in no position to make... I am, Ari said, standing up, ignoring the pain from his bruises. I will play this game. I will fight in their ring, and I will play their strategy games. But I am not a pawn. If I find a way to end this without a performance, if I find the truth that stops this war, the truth that will save the people on Kestrel, I am taking it. I will not be a prop in her show, or a victim in Veshek's. I am here to save people, not to win a circlet. Tell her that. Marathol studied the human for a long, silent moment. A flicker of something passed through his ancient eyes. Respect. The truth, Mara whispered, is a poor shield, human, but perhaps a worthy sword. I will tell her. He left. Ari was alone. The silence of the room heavier than before. The hook, the final turn of the knife, came just before the sleep cycle. Ari was summoned not to the bridge, and not to the training room, but to Saraxa's private strategy roost. It was a small, dark room, dominated by a central holoprojector. Saraxa was there, her armor off, wearing the simple black robes. Tarek was there, in his scarred gray armor, and Marathol was a shadow in the corner. The mood was grim. You wanted the truth, Ari, Saraxa said, her voice devoid of its imperial boom. It was the voice of the woman from the viewport. Here it is. Tarek stepped forward and activated the projector. The report from Kestrel is in. My intelligence network. My eyes have confirmed. The ships that attacked us. They were stolen, Ari said. No, Tarek said, his voice flat. They were not stolen. They were Karzul ships, manned by Karzul warriors, sworn to Veshek. They were sacrificed to make him look like a victim. He murdered his own men, Ari said, his stomach turning. To make a political point. Yes, Saraxa said. But that is not the truth you are here for. Tarek brought up a new file. It was not a tactical map. It was shipping manifests, cargo logs. These, Tarek said, are from the Karzul main armory on the homeworld. Ammunition movements, large scale, heavy energy cells, plasma conductors, kinetic rounds, all moving in the last 48 hours. Ari leaned closer, reading the manifests. These are not going to the fleet. They are not going to the border stations. They are moving inland, to Veshek's private estates, to the halls of his council allies. He is arming his household guard, Marathol said, his voice a death rattle. He is arming his political faction. The three of them looked at Saraxa. She was staring at the manifests, her face pale, her hands clenched. This is not a challenge, she said, her voice a whisper. This is not a political maneuver to test me. She looked up, her black eyes finding Ares. The cub was gone. The Empress was gone. All that was left was a woman facing a terrible, cold certainty. He is not preparing for a trial. He is preparing for a coup. The strategy roost was silent. Tarek's report of the sacrificed Karzul ships hung in the air, a toxic, corrosive fog. The manifests detailing the internal arms movements were a death sentence, written in the cold language of logistics. Marathol was the first to speak, his voice like the rustle of ancient parchment. He will not wait for the trials. This is the act of a man who believes he has already won. He is sealing the capital. He is, Saraxa agreed. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. She was looking at the manifest, but her eyes were seeing something else, a memory from a long time ago. He is staging the same play, the same ambush. She looked at her two most trusted advisors. Tarek, Mara, leave us. Tarek Sora looked shocked. Empress, in this. Leave us, she repeated. It was not a request. It was an alteration of the room's physics. Tarek and Mara shared a look of profound concern, bowed as one, and retreated, the heavy door hissing shut, sealing Ari in with the most powerful and most endangered woman in the galaxy. The silence that remained was different. It was heavy, not with politics, but with memory. They did this before, Saraxa said, her voice small. She did not sound like an empress. House Karzul. It was not pirates. It was not a random attack that left me in that shipping container. She walked to the small viewport, this one showing the long, curved spine of her own dreadnought. It was an ambush, a state visit to a rim world. My family's shuttle was supposed to be protected. Instead, Veshek's ships. Then a loyal counselor, even then. They emerged from the shadow of a gas giant and opened fire. They called it a tragic accident, a failure of honor by a lesser house. But it was them. They executed my family, my guards. Her hands, unarmored, clenched into white-knuckled fists. My last guard pushed me into a medical supply pod, a stasis unit, and ejected me into the shipping lane. She went back to the fight, to die. Veshek's ship. It scanned the pod. I know it did. And then it left. They did not just want me dead. They wanted me lost. To die in the void, slowly, in a box. Anonymous. She turned, her black eyes locking onto his. And then, months later, you opened the lid. Ari said nothing. He simply absorbed the truth. He had not just saved a cub. He had saved the target of the galaxy's most patient, ruthless politician. He is not preparing for a coup, Ari, she said, the name sounding natural on her tongue. He is finishing one he started 20 years ago. And you are the one thing he never, ever accounted for. The one piece of the past that came back. The rending Ke, Ari said, the words tasting like ash. The life debt, the bondmate. He shook his head. It is not a shield, Saraxa. It is a target. You have painted me, and by doing so, you have painted yourself. I have used the law, she snapped, the Empress returning. You have been trapped by it, he countered, stepping toward her. Veshek wants this. He wants the trial of worth. He wants a human, a prey bond. He stopped, seeing the word register on her face. Yes, she said, her voice hardening. I have seen the broadcasts he is leaking to the lower houses. The prey bond Empress. The human tamer. He is painting me as unstable, lost to emotion, controlled by a weak, soft-bodied inferior. And you are playing right into his hands by putting me in a death match I cannot possibly win, Ari said, his voice rising. Can you not? She asked, her gaze intense. The man I saw on the bridge was not a scrap hauler. The man who felt a riptide in space that a Volari dreadnought's sensors could not see. That was not an inferior. That was something they have never seen. That is the man I am betting on. That is not a bet, Saraxa. That is a prayer. Then we will pray, she said. But we will act first. A new resolve settled over her. This was not the frightened cub or the cornered empress. This was a strategist. You are right, she said. This is not just about the law. This is about survival. I have been trying to use the old rules to win. Veshek is using no rules to win. We must make a new contract. Not the rending K, not the life debt, a new one, between us. Right now. She stood tall, her simple black robes giving her a dignity the armor only hinted at. I have sworn to uphold the Dominion, to protect its people. Veshek has sworn the same, but his people are just his own house. I will use the old laws, and I will bend them. I will use this trial, this archaic, brutal piece of theater, to create a precedent so strong it becomes the new law. I will show them that a union with humanity is not weakness, but a new strength. Ari listened, and for the first time, he saw her true goal. It was not just to survive. It was to change them. And my part, he asked. Your part is to win, she said. He shook his head, a wry, tired smile touching his lips. No. My part is to do what I have always done. What I did on the Mothwing. What I did on the bridge. I save people. You are obsessed with honor. Veshek is obsessed with power. I am obsessed with not dying and not letting other people die. Your law, your precedent. It is a tool. Nothing more. I will use it to save Kestrel. I will use it to stop Veshek. But if a moment comes where I have to choose between your honor and a civilian life, I am not choosing honor. That, Saraxa said, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face, is why you will win. That is the new contract. You will save the people. I will save the law. And together, we will save the Dominion from itself. The next few days were a blur of calculated, controlled violence. The trial of worth was not just one event, but a series of tests. And Tarek Sora was now training Ari not just to survive, but to win. The beatings continued, but now they had purpose. The Volari honor code is a weapon, Tarek rumbled, as he once again had Ari pinned to the mat. Veshek uses it as a shield. The Empress uses it as a sword. You will use it as a distraction. Get up. But Veshek was not idle. His smear campaign was in full force. The term prey bond was everywhere, whispered in the halls, broadcast on shadow feeds. Ari was a target, twice. Heavy cargo lifts malfunctioned as he passed under them. Once, a food synthesizer delivered a ration bar that smelled suspiciously of neurotoxin. The most blatant attempt came during a navigational readiness drill. The second trial is strategy, Tarek explained, leading Ari into a cavernous simulator bay. Before that, you must be certified on a Volari vessel. You have proven you can feel space. Now, prove you can fly a true warrior ship. In the center of the bay sat a Volari interceptor. It was less a ship and more a collection of engines and weapons, held together by an aerodynamic, bladed frame. It was gorgeous, deadly, and looked impossibly complex. She is beautiful, Ari said, walking around it, his pilot's heart thrumming for the first time in years. She is the Harbinger, Tarek said. A standard-issue interceptor. You will run the gauntlet, a simulation through a dense asteroid field. The human record for this course is non-existent. You will be the first. No pressure, Ari muttered. He climbed into the cockpit. The flight suit felt alien, the neural interface port humming, hungry. He jacked in. The Harbinger was not the Mothwing. It was not the Crimson Crown. This was different. The Mothwing was a dull, reliable beast. The Dreadnought was a vast, angry god, its data stream a flood. This was a scalpel. He did not just receive data. He became the ship. His mind expanded, his senses flooding. He felt the coiled, waiting power in the engine, the cold potential in the weapon systems, the fine, hair-trigger response of the maneuvering thrusters. The ship's systems sang to him, a high, clear note in the symphony of the void, and the Warden key. The Aegis algorithm grafted to his nervous system. It woke up. He was not a man in a box. He was a creature of metal and fire, and the simulation bay was a cage. "All right," he said, his voice coming over the comm, strangely amplified by the ship's systems. "Let us stretch. Run the gauntlet, human." Tarek's voice rumbled in his ear. "Do not get overly confident." The simulation started. The bay walls melted away, replaced by the holographic, terrifying beauty of a dense, chaotic asteroid field. Ari smiled. This was home. He did not fly. He danced. He let the Warden's sense guide him, feeling the gravimetric pull of the rocks, the subtle eddies of space dust. He did not dodge the asteroids. He flowed between them. His ship, a silver thread in a storm of rock. The engines roared, the sound of physical vibration that he felt in his very core. "Impressive," Tarek's voice admitted, after a full minute of flawless, high-speed maneuvering. "Your Warden sense is effective." "It is not so bad," Ari grinned, rolling the ship on its axis to slide through a closing gap. "This thing, it is a bit twitchy, is not at all this power. It is like a gilded, screaming paint can." Tarek did not appreciate the humor. "Just complete the course, pilot. The final stretches." Suddenly, the Harbinger shuddered violently. A red light flashed on the console. Engine overload, cascade, failure imminent. "What is this?" Ari said, his blood turning to ice. He was fighting the controls. The stick was sluggish, then unresponsive. "I do not know." Tarek's voice was sharp. "My console shows you in perfect control. Ari, what is happening?" "It is a soft kill," Ari shouted, his hands flying over the console, trying to bypass the lockout. Someone is in the system. They are feeding me a virus. A malfunction. Veshek." The ship began to spin, the nose pitching down into a massive, simulated asteroid. "I am losing control." "Eject, eject," Tarek yelled. "No," Ari roared. He closed his eyes. He shut out the data, the virus, the alarms. He dived. He let the Warden's sense take over, feeling for the ship's core systems, pushing past the false commands. He was not a man. He was a current, a will. He found the engine control node, wrapped his mind around it, and squeezed. He was not flying the ship. He was commanding it. "Work! Damn you!" he yelled at the machine. With a bone-jarring slam, the controls went live again. He had 1 second. The asteroid filled the cockpit. He was inverted, out of control. He did not pull up. He punched the thrusters, performing an insane, full-axis burn, pushing the ship's nose deeper into the spin, using the rotational force to slingshot himself around the asteroid in a maneuver that should have torn the ship apart. The G-forces slammed him into his seat, his vision tunneling to a single, gray point. And then, he was clear. The ship was stable, its engines humming, the virus code erased. Ari sat there, gasping, his entire body soaked in sweat. He landed the ship gently in the center of the bay. The simulation faded. He sat in the silence of the cockpit for a long moment, just listening to the click, click, click of the cooling engines, The canopy hissed open. Tarek Sora was standing there, his face carved from stone. He looked at Ari. He looked at the ship. He looked at the diagnostic report flashing on a nearby screen. Sabotage, Tarek stated. It was not a question. A malfunction, Ari said, unstrapping himself, his hands shaking. Just a drill. Tarek's eyes narrowed. He said nothing. He just offered Ari a massive, gauntleted hand and pulled him from the cockpit. The captain's respect, Ari noted, was a heavier thing than his fists. The day of the first trial arrived. The Crimson Crown had jumped to a neutral system, a place of grim, black rock, to an ancient, orbital arena, the ring of first judgment. It was a spectacle. Thousands of Valari, from every house, had gathered. Their ships filled the nearby void. The arena itself was a massive, open-air bowl, the floor covered in black, volcanic sand. A containment field held in the atmosphere, but it did not hold in the sound. When Ari walked out, clad in simple, leather and mesh armor, and carrying a single, bladed staff, the noise was a physical thing. Pray bond, pray bond, pray bond. The chant was a deep, guttural roar from thousands of throats. They hated him. They despised what he represented. He looked up at the imperial box. Saraxa was there, on her throne, in full regalia, her face an impassive, golden mask. She was flanked by Marathol, and, on a slightly lower dais, sat Counselor Malgor Veshek, his expression one of paternal, feigned concern. This, Ari muttered to himself, is a long way from Kestrel. His opponent entered from the far gate. It was Kresh. Tarek had not exaggerated. He was a mountain, clad in thick, ceremonial bronze armor. His helmet was a snarling, demonic beast. And in his hands, he held a plasma axe. The blade was not yet lit, but the emitter was the size of Ares' head. An elder stepped to the center, striking a massive, resonant gong. The first trial combat by the ancient law. It is first blood. The bond candidate, Ari Mercer, faces the champion, Kresh of House Karzul. The law is the law. Let the gods see. The elder retreated. The crowd roared. Kresh ignited his axe. With a hiss, voom, a 2-foot blade of white-hot plasma erupted. The heat washed over Ari from 50 yards away. Kresh pointed the axe at Ari. Human, I am Kresh. I dedicate this blood to the honor of my house. Prepare to die. Ari swallowed. Right, he said, to himself. Honor, drama, vulnerability. Kresh charged. He was not fast, but he was inevitable. He was a landslide. His armored feet thumped on the sand. Ari did what he did best. He ran. He circled, using his agility. Kresh swung his axe, a huge, horizontal arc that, had it connected, would have cut Ari in half. Ari ducked, the plasma hissing over his head, singing his hair. The crowd booed. They wanted a fight, not a chase. Stand and fight, coward, Kresh roared. Gladly, Ari yelled back, his voice sounding thin in the huge arena. Just, let me find a good spot. He needed a plan. Tarek's advice was good, but this thing was too big. Ari's staff felt like a toothpick. He kept circling, his eyes darting. The arena, the walls, the sand, the sound. The walls were carved stone, and the crowd's chant was echoing. Pray bond. Pray bond. Pray bond. Pray bond. The sand. It was not just sand. Near the walls, large ventilation ports periodically puffed out gusts of air, keeping the atmosphere circulating, and when they did, they stirred the sand into little whirlwinds. He had it. Environment. Acoustics. He let Kresh chase him toward the arena wall, near one of the vents. Kresh was getting angry, his swings becoming wilder. Hold still, you! Insect, Kresh bellowed. In a minute, Ari said. He timed it. The hiss of the vent started. A cloud of black sand puffed up. Ari ducked into it. Kresh charged in, blind, swinging his axe, cutting the cloud of sand, which fused in the plasma heat, turning to glittering, black glass dust. "Where are you?" Kresh roared, his voice muffled by the sound. Ari used the acoustics. He was 10 feet to Kresh's left, but he yelled, "Over here!" He threw his voice right. The echo did its work. It bounced off the wall. "Here, here." Kresh, disoriented by the sand, blinded by his own rage, turned right, toward the echo. He swung his axe at a ghost, and he exposed his left side, his armpit, the gap in the bronze armor where the joint mechanism sat, Tarek's voice in his head. Half a second. Ari did not hesitate. He did not charge. He darted. He moved like a fencer, not a brawler. His bladed staff shot out. A single, precise thrust. Shkt. It was not a deep blow. It was not a killing blow. But it was a stick. Ari was already 10 feet away, back in a defensive stance, before Kresh even realized what had happened. Kresh looked down. The bladed tip of Ari's staff had found the gap. It had pierced the mesh undersuit. A thin, dark, blue line of Valari blood was trickling down his side. The arena went utterly, completely silent. You could hear the drip, drip, drip of the blood hitting the sand. Kresh stared at his side. He looked at Ari. He looked at his axe. He looked at his side again. The elder stepped forward, his hand raised. "Blood. The trial is ended. The law is satisfied." The gong rang. The crowd did not cheer. They did not boo. They were confused. They had come for an execution. They had seen a trick, a display of footwork, and Wind Kresh roared, a sound of pure, primal frustration, and raised his axe to charge again. "Kresh!" Tarek Sora's voice boomed from the stands, amplified by the arena system. "Heal! The law is satisfied?" Kresh froze. He trembled with rage. Then, with agonizing slowness, he deactivated his axe. He threw it to the ground, the thud echoing, and stormed from the arena, his pride mortally wounded. In the Imperial box, Veshek was no longer smiling. He was clapping, a slow, precise, insulting clap. Saraxa stood. She did not look at Veshek. She looked at Ari. She raised one armored hand, and she nodded. Once, Ari stood there, his heart hammering, the staff still in his hand. He had won. He had just made things 1,000 times worse. Back on the Crimson Crown, the mood was grimly celebratory. Tarek Sora found Ari in the mess hall, where he was trying to eat a ration bar. "You are a terrible fighter," Tarek said, sitting opposite him. "Thanks," Ari said, his mouth full. "You are a great teacher." You listened," Tarek said, as if the concept were alien to him. "The echo, the sand, that was not combat. That was an assassination of honor. First blood," Ari said. "That was the rule." "You won," Tarek agreed. He looked impressed. He leaned forward. In the stands, Elder Mara was beside me. He said, "He fights to win. But I think he fights like graffiti on a law book." Ari blinked. "Graffiti." "It is messy," Tarek said, a rare, sharp smile flashing. "It is disrespectful. But you cannot look away." "I will take that as a compliment," Ari said. Their quiet moment was broken by Marathal, who entered the mess hall, his ancient face grim. "It is done, Captain, Pilot. We have what we need." They moved back to the strategy roost. The air was thick with tension again. "My eyes, as the captain calls them, have been busy," Mara said. He brought up a new file on the hollow table. "Veshek has been sloppy. His win in the arena gave him confidence. He believed you would be a brute, like Kresh. His loss, Tarek corrected. He lost. He was defeated, Mara said. But Veshek lost. He lost control of the narrative. And in his anger, he rushed his next move. The display filled with lines of code, dense, encrypted, flickering green. Communications, Mara said. Between a Karzul deep space relay and a human commercial frequency, a faction known as the Terra Prime Front, extremists. They want war as badly as Veshek does. They believe it will purify the human race and allow them to take control of the scattered blocks. So Veshek is not just staging a coup, Ari said. He is colluding with an external enemy, treason. A perfect, symbiotic relationship, Mara said. Veshek gets his war. The Terra Prime Front gets their chaos. They are trading arms for political disruption, like the attack on the crown. Ari leaned in, looking at the code. He was not reading the content. He was looking at the structure, the wrapper, the encryption key. It was elegant. It was complex. It was layered. And it was sickeningly, horribly familiar. Where did you get this? Ari asked, his voice suddenly quiet. From a captured Karzul courier drone. Why? Mara asked. Ari's blood ran cold. He felt the same way he had in the cockpit, just before the accident. But this was not a ship. This was a memory. The signature, Ari whispered, tracing the flickering lines with his finger. The handshake protocol, the way it hides its own data markers. What is it, Ari? Saraxa asked, stepping up behind him. This is not Karzul encryption, Ari said. And it is not Terra Prime encryption. They are not smart enough. Then who? Ari looked up, his face pale, the face of a man who had seen a ghost. It is an Aegis Warden signal key, he said. Project Aegis. My old unit. The ones who built me. He looked at Saraxa, the truth of his past and her present slamming together. Veshek is not just working with human radicals, Saraxa. He is working with the people who created me, and they were the ones responsible for the disaster at Cygnus Delta, the ones who got my whole squadron killed. The revelation hung in the strategy roost, colder and heavier than the vacuum of space. The Aegis Warden signal key, Ares past, a ghost he had outrun for 20 years, had just materialized in the heart of the Volari Dominion, and it was in league with the Empress's mortal enemy. Saraxa was staring at the flickering green code, her face a mask of stone. Aegis, she repeated. The ones who built you. The ones who Cygnus Delta. They were not just my squadron, Ares said, his voice flat, devoid of the emotion that was churning in his gut. They were a Black Ops project. We were the key, a living algorithm to control FTL. They wanted to weaponize the currents, not just navigate them. Cygnus Delta. That was not an accident. It was a test, or a cleansing. They were erasing their tracks. And Veshek has this key, Tarek rumbled, his hand on the hilt of his sidearm. Veshek does not have the key, Ari said, looking at his own hands. Veshek is working with the locksmiths, and they want their key back. Before the tactical implications of this could settle, the roost's door hissed open. A bridge officer, a young Volari female with the silver pips of a communications subaltern, marched in, her armor clicking on the stone floor. She snapped a crisp, four-fingered salute. Empress. Urgent translations on the Kestrel Dominion border. A large fleet. They are hailing us. On screen, Saraxa said, the Empress instantly suppressing the woman. The holotable shimmered, the Aegis code vanishing, replaced by a tactical map of the neutral zone border. The Crimson Crown, a single, red icon, was deep in the zone, At the orbital arena, miles away, at the primary jump point that led back to Valari space, a massive cluster of new icons had appeared, at least 20 of them. "Who are they?" Tarek demanded. "They identify as a unified honor escort, Captain," the subaltern reported, her voice crisp. "House Irlan and House Fane. They are awaiting the Empress to ensure her safe passage back to the homeworld in light of the recent instability." A new window opened on the display. It was Counselor Malgor Veshek, his face serene, his robes immaculate. He was not hailing them. It was a pre-recorded message. "Your Majesty." Veshek's smooth, oily voice filled the room. The council was so disturbed by the cowardly, illegal attack on your person, and by the revelation of these traitors within our ranks. He gave a subtle, dismissive glance in the direction of the camera. "We could not, in good conscience, allow you to remain unprotected. I have taken the liberty of dispatching a fleet of my most trusted allies to escort you. They will form a protective cordon. They await your command at the TRAPPIST-9 jump point. Your safety is our paramount concern." The message ended. Marathol, who had been silent as a tomb, let out a dry, rasping sound. Protective custody escort. He has invoked the second vow of the Council, to protect the throne from all threats, foreign and domestic. He is implying you are the domestic threat." "He is not escorting," Tarek said, his voice a low growl as he stared at the tactical display. "He is blockading. Look at their formation." "It is not a welcome corridor. It is a wall. They are sealing the jump point. They have pincer groups on the secondary routes. He has caged us. If we stay here," Mara continued, "he will declare us rogue." The Empress, addled by her human bond, refuses to return to the capital. If we try to break his blockade, we will be firing on allied houses. He wins. He starts a civil war and blames us for it. The trap was perfect, political, legal, and absolute. Ari was not looking at the ships. He was staring at the space between the ships, the Aegis Key, the fleet. The pieces were slamming together in his mind with the force of a physical impact. "No," Ari whispered, his blood running ice cold. "It is not a blockade. It is not a cage." Saraxa turned, her gaze locking onto his. "What did you say, pilot?" "He is not a politician. He is a monster," Ari said, his voice quiet, shaking with a 20-year-old terror. "He is not caging us. He is hurting us." He closed his eyes, shutting out the tactical display. He did not need to see it. He could feel it. The warden sense, the Aegis Key in his spine, was screaming. It was not a current, like at Kestrel. It was not a river. It was a thickness. A cold, viscous, hungry presence in the void, centered perfectly on the jump point. A patch of space that felt wrong. "It is a trap," he said, opening his eyes. The bridge crew was staring at him. He did not care. "An FTL suppression field. A resonance trap." "What are you talking about, human?" Tarek demanded. "He is not just giving us one option," Ari said, his voice rising, the pilot taking over. "He is giving us one option. That is a lie. He wants us to jump. He is daring us to. It is the only way out, and it is the one way we will all die." He looked at Saraxa, the old nightmare playing out behind his eyes. "This is what they did at Cygnus Delta. This is the Aegis Directorate's signature weapon. You jump into that field, and you do not come out. The field creates a cascading resonance delay in your jump drive. It builds and builds until the drive, it cannot translate. It collapses in on itself. Your ship turns into a small, very bright star. It looks like a navigation error, a tragic accident." The full, horrifying scope of Veshek's plan settled over the roost. He would kill 20 allied ships, Tarek whispered, horrified. Just to kill us. No, Ari said, a grim, bitter understanding dawning. That is the other part of the trap. You called them allies. Are they? Or are they just disguised? He would not, Mara began. He would, Saraxa said, her voice like steel. He sacrificed his own men at Kestrel. He would sacrifice his own allies at the border, all to paint me as the reckless empress who got her escort killed by a human navigational error. They were trapped, utterly. If they stayed, they were rogues. If they jumped, they were dead. Veshek would not even have to fire a shot. He would simply wait. Silence dominated the room. Tarek was pacing like a caged predator. Mara was stroking his long, gray beard, his eyes closed in grim contemplation. He made one mistake, Ari said, his voice quiet. Saraxa looked at him. What? This trap, Ari said, his mind racing, the old Aegis Warden protocols lighting up. It is a complex algorithm. It is a lock. A very, very good one. He tapped his temple. But I am the key. He is using my system, and he is using it against me. What are you proposing, Ari? Saraxa asked, her voice low. The trap. It works by absorbing energy, Ari said, thinking aloud, the plan forming, insane and brilliant. It feeds on the jump drive's translation energy. It takes it and turns it back on itself. It is a one-way street. Your point, Tarek snapped. My point, Ari said, is what happens if you feed it. What if you do not just give it enough energy to trigger the trap? What if you give it all the energy? What if you oversaturate it? You mean blow it up, Tarek asked. No, Ari said, a wild, sharp grin touching his lips. Not blow it up, bend it. He looked at Saraxa. The core of this trap, the Aegis trap, it has a kill node, a single, specific frequency that it builds to. If we perform a reverse jump, if we channel the Crimson Crown's entire main reactor, all of it, weapons, shields, everything, and fire it like a bullet, directly into that kill node, for exactly 1.5 seconds. You are insane, Tarek stated flatly. That would detonate the drive, and us with it. Not if I am modulating the frequency, Ari said, his eyes bright with a pilot's madness. We will not just trigger the trap. We will ride it. We will warp the suppression field. We will create a standing wave, a tunnel, right through the middle of their fleet. We will use their own weapon as a doorway. A tunnel. To where? Saraxa asked. Her voice hushed. To the other side, Ari said. We will slide out of FTL, powered down, right on top of their engine flares. We will be a ghost in their own machine, before they even realize what has happened. We will be behind them. A long silence. And if you are wrong, pilot, Tarek asked. Ari's grin faded. If I am wrong, if I am off by half a second, or a single frequency point, we will be the brightest navigation error in the history of the Dominion. But I am not wrong. This is my system. I can feel it. And it is angry. Saraxa looked at him for one long beat. She saw the man from the cockpit. She saw the man from the bridge. She saw the pilot who felt the currents. To the bridge, she said, her voice absolute. Pilot, you have the con. The bridge of the Crimson Crown was a symphony of controlled panic. They were at red alert, but the klaxon was a low, thrumming groan. Empress, we are receiving an urgent hail from the honor escort, the comms officer reported. "Put it on," Saraxa said, seating herself in her throne. A Valari face appeared on the main screen. He wore the teal and silver of House Irlan. "Your Majesty, we are awaiting your transit. We are detecting unusual energy readings from your ship. Please, power down and come under our protection. For your own safety." His voice was smooth, patronizing, and utterly false. Ari was strapped into the main navigation console. He had been jacked in for 5 minutes, and the data stream was a glorious, terrifying roar. He could feel the ship, every plate, every conduit, and he could feel the trap. It was a vast, dark, hungry mouth, waiting in the void. "Helmsman," Ari's voice was amplified, calm, and terrifying. "Bring us about, point us, directly at the center of that fleet." The helmsman asked, his hands trembling. "Do it!" Saraxa's voice commanded. The ship groaned as it turned. On the main screen, the Allied fleet grew larger, a wall of metal. "Tactical," Ari continued. "I want all non-essential systems powered down. Divert all power. Shields, weapons, internal gravity, everything. To the FTL jump core. I want that core to scream." "Pilot," the tactical officer yelled. "That will leave us completely defenseless, and it will redline the core." "We will not need defenses," Ari said. His eyes closed, his mind dancing with the Warden algorithm. "He is right. Redline it. On my mark. Prepare to charge the FTL drive." The lights on the bridge dimmed, flickered, and went to a dull, emergency red. The ship shuddered, a deep, bone-jarring vibration. They are detecting our power surge," the comms officer said. "House Irlan is hailing again. They are powering their weapons." "As planned," Ari said. He was in the zone. He could feel the trap's resonance, the kill node. It was building. It was there, a high, keening whine in his mind. "The frequency is locking. I have it." He opened his eyes. "Saraxa. Now." "Helmsman." Saraxa's voice was a whisper, but it carried across the bridge. "Engage. Engage," Ari roared. "Jump." It was not a jump. It was a violation. There was a lurch that threw half the crew from their seats. The main view screen did not show the blue-white tunnel of hyperspace. It showed a tunnel of agonizing, churning, blood-red static. The ship was not flying. It was being squeezed. Alarms shrieked. Hull integrity failing 900%. "Drive temperature is critical. It is off the scale. We are going to—" "Feed it!" Ari screamed. His body arched back in the chair, a line of blood trickling from his nose. He was wrestling with the ship, with the trap itself. More power, push it, burn the core now. He could feel the node. The dark, hungry thing. It was trying to break him, to turn his ship inside out. He pushed back, not with strength, but with harmony. He matched its frequency. He became the trap. The red tunnel on the screen bent. It warped. It twisted. And then, slam! The world vanished. The alarms died. The red light was gone. There was only silence. A black, dead, terrifying silence. The ship was dark, running on the barest emergency power. The crew was frozen, their faces pale in the faint, red light. Ari collapsed forward, ripping the jack from his temple, gasping, the smell of ozone and his own blood in his nostrils. "Report," Saraxa said. She was the only thing on the bridge that had not moved. She sat on her throne, a statue of pure, black and crimson will. The tactical officer, his hands shaking so badly he could barely touch his console, stared at his screen. I do not." "Report," Tarek Sora's voice boomed from beside the throne. "Empress," the tactical officer whispered, his voice cracking with sheer disbelief. We are here. We are behind them. The maneuver, it worked. The lights flickered, stabilized, and came back up to a low blue. The main view screen resolved. It showed the engines, the massive, glowing, blue-hot engine flares of the Allied fleet. They were still in formation, still staring at the jump point, still waiting for a ghost. They have not even noticed, the helmsman breathed. Wait, Aerie gasped, pointing at the screen. He was exhausted, but his mind was sharp. Look, the two on the flank, House, Fane. They are turning. They are breaking formation. Why are they? They are not House Fane, the tactical officer said, his voice rising. They're transponders. They are shedding them. They are unmasking Empress. Those insignia. The jamming field on the two cruisers flickered and died, revealing their true colors. Not the teal and silver of Irlan, or the green of Fane. They were painted in the brutalist, stark, black and red of House Karzul. He seated his own men among them, Tarek growled. He was going to have them fire on us, start the war, and blame House Irlan. Treachery upon treachery. The two Karzul ships, now exposed, realized their position. They were trapped, their engines cold, between the Crimson Crown and the real Allied fleet, who were now turning, confused. Empress, the weapons officer said, his voice hard. We have a firing solution. The two Karzul cruisers. Their shields are down. Their engines are cold. We can end them. Both of them. A predatory silence fell on the bridge. Every eye turned to Saraxa. This was the moment. Vengeance. Justice. Saraxa looked at the two ships. Her eyes were as cold as the void. Hold your fire, she commanded. Your Majesty. Tarek was stunned. This is the moment we can end this. We can... No, Saraxa said, standing. We will not prove Veshek right. We will not be the unstable rulers he claims. We will not win this with blood, when we can win it with truth. Pilot. She looked at Ari. You wanted to save people, not win a game. Give them the truth. Ari understood. He dragged himself to the comm station. Patch me through. All channels. Dominion-wide. And get Elder Marathol on this channel. Now. Marathol, who had been standing like a gray statue, stepped forward, a comlink in his hand. He nodded. Ares' voice, weary, bloody, but strong, went out across the Dominion. This is Ari Mercer, pilot, aboard the Crimson Crown. We were just escorted by a fleet belonging to Counselor Veshek. He took a breath. He set a trap, an Aegis FTL suppression field, an illegal, forbidden weapon. The same weapon that murdered my squadron at Cygnus Delta. He intended for the Empress to die. He intended for 20 ships of his allies to die, to start a war. Then, Marathol's voice cut in, ancient, revered, and filled with a cold, holy rage. By the ancient law, I, Marathol, keeper of the rights, do now invoke the 7 values of ancient honor. His voice boomed across the network. 1 loyalty to the throne, betrayed. 2 truth in council, betrayed. 3 honor in combat, betrayed. 4 sanctity of the flag, betrayed. 5 protection of the allied, betrayed. 6 rejection of the unseen blade, betrayed. 7 oath of the council, betrayed. He paused, and the silence was deafening. Counselor Malgor Veshek, head of House Karzul, is, by the 7 values, declared Boinkar, oathbreaker, traitor. Ari took the channel again. And now, we have his 2 ships. They are helpless. Their weapons are cold. And we will not fire. On the screen, the two Karzul ships, exposed, shamed, and terrified, scrambled. Their engines flared. They did not fight. They ran. They jumped to FTL, vanishing in a flash of blue light. The rest of the fleet, the real House Irlin and House Fane, just sat there, stunned, realizing they had been pawns, realizing they had almost been sacrificed. A single, sheepish message came from their flagship. Empress, we await your orders. The Crimson Crown, its power core drained, its weapons cold, sat behind a fleet it could have annihilated, and had not. That image, a dreadnought, a symbol of Volari power, choosing mercy, choosing truth over violence, was broadcast across the Dominion. It was a statement more powerful than any weapon. A stunning display, a new voice said, a new transmission. Veshek. His holographic image appeared on the bridge. He was not on a ship. He was in a grand stone hall. He was not smiling. He looked furious. But his voice was a mask of cold control. A stunning display of piloting, human. Truly, you have proven your skill. And a dramatic accusation. Elder. But that is all it is. An accusation. You have proven you can run. You have proven you can talk. He looked directly at Saraxa. But the trial of worth is not over. The first trial was a fluke. The second trial, strategy, still stands. He smiled. A cold, reptilian gesture. I will see you in the Hall of Judgment, on the homeworld, where such theatrics will be put aside for true mental combat. We will see if the humans' graffiti holds up against the law. The challenge was laid. He was retreating, but not breaking. The hologram winked out. He is just changing arenas, Ari said, wiping the blood from his nose. He is, Saraxa said. She looked at Ari, and the respect in her eyes was a tangible thing. He is. We have won the battle, but the war is now in my home. She turned. The Empress, fully in command. Set a course for the homeworld, and commend the pilot. He has earned his place. As the bridge crew, giddy with relief and a strange, new pride, burst into disciplined activity, Saraxa turned to Tarek and Mera. Her voice was a whisper, a blade of ice. He has moved the game to the palace. Fine. We will play. She looked at her two most trusted advisors. He wants a strategy game when we land. I want you to take a tactical team. I want you to raid the Karzul data archives. Tonight. He thinks he is safe in his home. We will burn it down. With the truth. The Hall of Judgment on the Volari homeworld was a monument to intimidation. It was not a room. It was a carved-out canyon, a vast, subterranean amphitheater of polished, resonant basalt. Pillars, thick as sequoia trunks, rose hundreds of feet to a vaulted ceiling that mimicked a night sky, complete with captured plasma stars. The air was cool and still, and every whisper, every shuffle of a boot, echoed with unnatural clarity. At the center, on a raised dais, sat the Council of Elders, a formidable gallery of gray-robed, ancient Volari. On a throne of state, higher than them all, sat Saraxa. She was in full regalia, her face an unreadable, crimson and black mask of war. And on the floor, in a circle of white, judgment stone, stood Ari. He wore a simple, formal black human tunic. He looked small, soft, and utterly out of place. Opposite him, on a matching dais of his own, sat Counselor Malgor Veshek. He was not in robes. He was in the full, silver and black armor of a house lord, projecting strength and tradition. He looked concerned, paternal, and he was winning. The second trial, strategy, Veshek's voice boomed, amplified by the hall's perfect, ancient acoustics. The question before the bond candidate, a simple one. A holographic map flared to life between them, showing the border, the Karzul territories, and the unstable human sectors, including Kestrel. How does one bring stability? How does one enforce the honor of the dominion upon a lawless frontier? The implication was clear. How would you, little man, do what we do? This was Veshek's home, his game, his rules. The council was his audience. The law was his weapon. Ari looked at the map. He saw the Karzul supply lines, the trade routes they controlled, the smaller, client houses that fed their war machine. He saw the flow of resources. It was an FTL current, but one of money and power. He took a breath. You are asking the wrong question, counselor. A murmur went through the assembled nobles in the galleries. Veshek raised an eyebrow, a gesture of mild, feigned curiosity. The problem is not lawlessness, Ari said, his voice quiet, yet carrying in the perfect silence. It is desperation. You speak of stability, but you mean control. You speak of honor, but you mean submission. A human lecture on semantics, Veshek chuckled. How predictable. No, Ari said. A pilot's observation. A system under this much stress. You do not fix it by adding more stress. You do not stop a reactor from melting down by firing a missile at it. You relieve the pressure. He pointed at the map. You want to stop House Karzul. You think this is a military problem. It is not. It is a logistics problem. He gestured to the smaller, client houses, the ones whose resources were being funneled, nearly stolen, by Karzul. You do not fight the wall, he said. You pull the stones out from the bottom. He speaks in riddles, a conservative elder grumbled. No, I speak in strategy, Ari said, his confidence growing. He felt the current of the room. He had their attention. I call it the fuse doctrine. You do not attack Veshek's fleets. He has too many. You do not challenge his honor. He has none. A collective gasp. Veshek's face tightened, his mask of concern cracking. You buy his allies out from under him, Ari said. You go to House Irlin and House Fane, the ones he almost sacrificed. You go to these smaller houses he is bleeding dry. And you give them autonomy. You give them direct trade routes to the core. You cut Karzul out of the supply chain. You cut the fuse. He is building a war machine, but he has no fuel. His armies, they will starve. His ships will rust. The war ends without a single shot fired. You will replace his economic tyranny with economic reform. The silence that followed was absolute. The elders were staring, stunned. This was not war. This was commerce. It was human. Veshek threw his head back and laughed. It was a cold, dry, terrible sound. Reform autonomy. You, child. This is the Volari Dominion. Strength respects strength. You do not bribe. Lesser houses with trade routes. You command them with honor and might. This fuse doctrine. It is weakness. The conservative gallery erupted in agreement. Weak. A human plan, soft. This is what your bondmate offers. Your Majesty, Veshek called up to Saraxa, his voice dripping with triumphant scorn. A plan based on money, not blood. This is the humanity you would bring to our people. This filth. Banging your head against a wall. Ari's voice cut through the noise, sharp and clear. Only proves that the wall is hard. The hall fell silent again. You want to prove your strength, Ari continued, his gaze locked on Veshek. You want to charge the wall fine? You will break your fleet. You will break your economy. You will spill a generation of blood, all to prove you are stronger than a problem you created. That is not strategy. That is ego. He dares. Veshek was on his feet, his hand on his weapon. This is not a failure of strength, Counselor, Ari pressed. It is a failure of imagination, and it is a failure of loyalty. That is enough, Veshek roared. He has failed the trial. He offers only insults and cowardice. He has offered a strategy, Syraxa's voice, amplified, boomed from the throne, shaking the very dust from the pillars. And it is sound. Your Majesty, Veshek was apoplectic. But, Syraxa continued, it is a moot point, is it not? Counselor for the Human Strategy assumes you are merely an overambitious political rival, when the truth is so much darker. I do not know what you— Tarek, Syraxa commanded. Mera, the evidence. From the shadows, Captain Tarek Sora and Elder Mera Thal stepped forward. Behind them, a massive, holographic projector flared to life. While the counselor was preparing his righteous indignation, Mera Thal's voice was a cold scalpel. He was careless with his private data archives, the ones we acquired last night. Veshek's face went white. The truth, Tarek's voice was a growl, is that the human strategy is irrelevant because Counselor Veshek is a traitor. Boom. The holographic display lit up, not with charts, but with the Aegis-keyed encryption code, with payment logs, with cargo manifest for arms shipments to the Terra Prime front. The Karzul archives, Mera narrated, his voice dripping with ancient, cold fury. Showing illicit payments, collusion, treason, the funding of human extremists, to create the very instability he decries. Lies, Veshek shouted. Fabrications. The human. He planted this. Planted this. Tarek brought up a new file. A secure, time-stamped audio log, linked to a payment. This is a payment authorization from Veshek's personal account to an untraceable human block corporation for the removal of an obstacle at Cygnus Delta 20 years ago. It is the payment for the assassination of the Aegis Warden Squadron. Ari's blood ran cold. It was there. The proof. And, Mera Thal said, his voice dropping to a whisper, the final payment, authorized just 3 days ago, to the same Shadow Corporation, the Aegis Directorate. The payment for the FTL suppression trap, the weapon that was to kill our Empress. The Hall of Judgment exploded. The council was on its feet. The nobles were screaming. Traitor, oathbreaker, Veshek was cornered. He was ruined. He looked at Syraxa, his eyes no longer full of scorn, but of a pure, cold, reptilian hatred. He thinks, Veshek hissed, his voice just for Ari, that he has won. And he raised his hand, a single, sharp, coated whistle, from the walls, from the pillars, from the galleries. They emerged, not Volari nobles, not council elders. They were guards, Praetorian guards, in the black and gold armor of Veshek's personal coven. They had been hidden in plain sight, disguised as ceremonial sentries. 30 of them. They ignited their plasma pikes. Kill the Empress, Veshek roared. Kill the human. The hall descended into chaos. The nobles ran. The council cowered. Syraxa's personal guard, The crimson blades, only 4 of them, formed a defensive circle around her throne. Tarek Sora was at her side in an instant, his own plasma sword hissing to life. "Tarek," Saraxa yelled, "get Ari out of here." "No," Ari yelled back. The guards were charging, a wall of black and gold. Ari looked around, his mind racing. The acoustics, the resonance, the hall, amplified sound. He had heard it. He had felt it. The Volari, their hearing. It was superior. 100 times more sensitive than a human's. A strength. Honor is vulnerability. Strength is vulnerability. He looked at the side of the dais. A massive, ceremonial gong. The one they used to call the council to order. A bronze disc, 10 feet wide. "Tarek," Ari yelled, running away from the exit, towards the gong. "Cover me now." Tarek did not understand, but he trusted. Blades to the human. 2 of the crimson blades, loyal to their empress, did the unthinkable. They left her side and charged to protect Ari. They met the first 2 Praetorians. Plasma on plasma, a shower of white-hot sparks. Ari reached the gong. He grabbed the massive, padded mallet. Veshek saw him. "Stop him! You fools, stop that!" A guard broke free, lunging at Ari, his pike tip sizzling. Vroom! A gray-armored blur. Tarek Sora. He had intercepted the guard, his sword cutting the pike in half, his armored fist slamming into the Praetorian's helmet, sending him sprawling. "Now! Pilot!" Tarek roared. Ari took the mallet. He looked at the resonant stone floor. He looked at the gong. "This is going to hurt." He did not hit the gong. He slammed the edge of the massive bronze disc, down, onto the resonant stone floor. Krakom! The sound was not a sound. It was a physical thing. A high-frequency, ultrasonic wave of pure, agonizing pain. The stone of the hall amplified it, focused it, turned the entire chamber into a sonic weapon. For Ari, it was like a thunderclap next to his ear. He fell to his knees, his vision blurring. For the Volari, it was a white-hot spike driven into their brains. Every single Volari in the room. Tarek, Saraxa, Veshek, the nobles, the council, and, most importantly, the 30 Praetorian guards. Screamed. They dropped their weapons. They grabbed their helmets, their heads, their sensitive, pointed ears. Their superior hearing had been turned against them. They were blinded, deafened, paralyzed by agony. All except Ari. He was human. He was in pain. But he was functional. The acoustic wave died, leaving a ringing, high-pitched silence. Ari got to his feet, his ears ringing. He looked around. The entire hall was on its knees. The leader of the Praetorian Guard, a massive brute in a captain's black armor, was the first to recover. He shook his head, his vision clearing, and saw Ari, the human, the cause of the pain. He roared, grabbing his pike. "No," a voice said. He turned. Saraxa was standing. She was pale, her hands shaking, blood trickling from her ears. But she was standing. "You," she said to the captain, "your oath was to the Dominion, not to him." "He is my lord," the captain growled, and lunged. Not at Saraxa, at Ari. Saraxa moved. She was not a duelist. She was a predator. She did not meet his charge. She sidestepped it, her armored hand grabbing his pike arm. She used his own momentum, twisted. Crack. His arm broke, his grip releasing the pike. She did not stop. She spun inside his guard, her other hand, the one holding a concealed, crimson-bladed dagger. Shh. She did not kill him. She slid the blade, hilt deep, into the one, unarmored spot Tarek had taught Ari about. The armpit, the nerve cluster. The captain froze. His entire body locked. He did not even fall. He just stood there, a statue of agony, his eyes wide. Saraxa ripped her blade free. She stepped back, her chest heaving. She was in pain. She was bleeding. But she was Empress. She looked at the captain. "You attacked my bondmate. You attacked my throne. Your life is forfeit. By the ancient law, I have the right to take your head." The captain's eyes widened in terror. "But," Saraxa said, her voice dropping, a dead man cannot confess." She looked at him. "Who gave the order?" The captain was shaking, his body convulsing. He looked at Saraxa's bloody blade. He looked at his lord, Veshek, who was just now pulling himself up, his face a mask of purple, agonizing rage. "Speak," Saraxa commanded, "and live as my prisoner, my servant, your life bound to me." The captain's honor was broken. His lord had failed. The Empress, in her mercy, had won. It was him. The captain gasped, pointing a trembling, armored finger at Veshek. "Lord Veshek, the order was from Veshek. It was over." "Seize the Oathbreaker," Marathol's voice, shaking but strong, roared. The remaining guards, the real Imperial guards, grabbed Veshek. He did not fight. He just stared at Ari, a look of such profound, venomous hatred that it was almost a physical blow. The trial," Veshek hissed as they dragged him, "is not over. The third trial, survival. It stands." "Indeed, it does," Saraxa said, her voice cold. "And it begins now." Veshek looked confused. "The third trial," Saraxa said, "is survival. And you, Malgor Veshek, have just been sentenced to it. A hunt. In the labyrinths. Tonight. You. Against him." She pointed at Ari. Veshek's blood ran cold. "That is not the law. You cannot." "I am making the law. Traitor," Saraxa said. "You twisted my trial. I am twisting yours. You will be hunted. Not by me. By my champion." She had just turned a public hunt into an execution. Veshek smiled. A cold, terrible smile. In the labyrinths, the palace labyrinths. My home against a soft human I accept. He knew something they did not. Night fell. The labyrinths beneath the palace were not a dungeon. They were the ancient, original catacombs of the city, miles of twisting, dark, stone corridors. And, Ari realized, they were also the palace's utility tunnels. "He is gone," Tarek growled. They stood at the entrance, a gaping, black maw. "He had a 5-minute head start. He is home. He knows these tunnels. We do not." "He is not just trying to survive," Ari said, strapping a tactical HUD to his head. He was in a black, stealth suit. Tarek and Mara, in matching dark armor, flanked him. "He is going somewhere." "His private seal chamber," Mara said. "It is down here. The one place the archive raid did not reach. It holds the physical seals, the original treaties, the true proof of his pact. With the Aegis Directorate, he is going to destroy it." "So," Tarek said, igniting a low-powered glow rod, "we are not hunting. We are racing." "He has the advantage," Mara said, his voice grim. "He knows the way. We are blind." "No," Ari said, his voice quiet. He looked at the tunnel. He closed his eyes. He did not look. He felt his pilot's sense, his warden key. It was not just for space. It was for currents. And the labyrinth was full of them. He could feel the architectural wind, the faint, cool draft from the main ventilation shaft. 3 corridors over, he could feel the subtle warmth from a massive power conduit, deep in the wall to his left. He could feel the rhythm of the security patrols, far above them, their magnetic boots causing a faint pulse in the stone. He thinks he knows these tunnels, Ari said, opening his eyes. The HUD flickered to life, showing a wireframe of nothing. But I can read them, he pointed. He went left. That is impossible, Tarek said. The seal chamber is right. He went left, Ari insisted. Because he is going to double back. He is running a pattern. But he is loud. I can feel his heat signature. He is leaking energy. He is running. He is scared. Ari started walking. We are not. We are cutting. He led them. Not down the main tunnels, but through them. This way. This is a thermal exhaust port. It is hot. But it is direct. They crawled through vents. They dropped down maintenance shafts. They followed the current of the palace's inner workings. Ari was not a man. He was a navigator. He was reading the space between the walls. He is close, Ari whispered. They were in a large, dark junction chamber. He is just ahead. He stopped. A trap, Tarek said, raising his pulse rifle. No, Ari said, sniffing the air. Ozone. And fuel. Marathol's eyes widened. The emergency launch bay. The ancient, secret one. For the first emperor. It is here. He is not going to the sealed chamber, Ari said, the realization hitting him. He is running. He is escaping. They burst into the chamber. It was a private hangar, small, ancient, and in the center, a sleek, black, human-make courier ship, Aegis Directorate. Veshek was at the ramp, his face a mask of triumph. He had known. The third trial is survival, Veshek sneered as the ramp began to close. And I win. The engines ignited with a whine. Saraxa, Tarek roared into his comm. He is in the private bay. He is. I see him. Saraxa's voice came back, cold, from the main command center. The wall of the hangar dissolved. It was a hologram. And beyond it, in the main, massive imperial hangar, stood the Crimson Crown, docked, looming, its internal weapons, charged. Saraxa was on the Crown's bridge. Her face was on the main screen. Malgor Veshek, she said, her voice amplified. You are caged. Veshek stared at the massive plasma cannons, pointed directly at his tiny ship. He was trapped. The choice. Saraxa's voice was soft, and she was looking at Ari. He could see his own tactical feed on her screen. Is yours, bondmate? My weapons are your weapons. He is a traitor. He is a murderer. He is an oathbreaker. He is yours. Give the order. Destroy. Or capture. Ari looked at the ship. He looked at Veshek, the man who had ordered the death of his squadron, the man who had tried to kill Saraxa, the man who had ruined everything. He could end it. One word. Fire. Vengeance. Hot and clean and final. He looked at Syrax's face on the screen. He saw the Empress, begging him to be better. Revenge, Ari said, his voice hoarse, is not justice. He looked at the ship. He looked at Tarek. Power. Power down the ship. Counselor, Ari said, his voice strong, broadcasting to Veshek's cockpit. And you will. Stand trial. Public trial, where the entire Dominion will see the truth. He looked at Syraxa. We do not stain. This, we do not become him. We capture. Veshek screamed, a raw, primal, animal sound. He was denied his execution. He was denied his end. He was sentenced to justice. Tarek, Ari said. Go. Get him. Tarek Sora, the most lethal warrior in the Dominion, looked at Ari, and he smiled. A real, genuine smile. With pleasure, pilot. He and his team stormed the ship, as Veshek simply collapsed at the controls, defeated, not by a weapon, but by an idea. The binary suns of the Valari homeworld cast long, sharp-edged shadows across the great plaza, shadows that seemed to carve the defiant from the defeated. The air was cool, but the atmosphere was held in a state of suspended, incendiary judgment. Thousands of Valari, from every house and caste, had gathered in a vast, silent circle. They were not here for a trial. The trial had been concluded in the fire and acoustics of the judgment hall. They were here for the reckoning. In the precise center of the plaza, Malgor Veshek stood on the executioner's stone. He was stripped of his armor, his fine robes, and all insignia of his house. He wore only a simple, gray prisoner's tunic. His hands, cuffed by glowing energy bonds, were the only source of light about him. He looked small, old, and brittle. The sight of his mundane frailty was more shocking to the crowd than any display of power. Captain Tarek Sora stood guard a few paces away, a mountain of scarred gray armor, his presence an absolute, impassive statement of the new order. Malgor Veshek. Elder Marathol's voice was not the dry rustle of an academic, but the cold, clear trumpet of law, amplified by the plaza's stones. You have confessed to treason. You have confessed to collusion with a foreign power. You have confessed to the murder of your own sworn warriors. You have confessed to the attempted assassination of your empress and the planned slaughter of your allies. Veshek, who had been staring at the ground, slowly lifted his head. His face was a mask of hollow, cavernous exhaustion. But his eyes were not defeated. They burned with a cold, intellectual spite that had survived the ruin of his plans. I confess to ambition, he said, his voice thin but carrying in the profound silence. The same ambition that built this plaza, that raised these towers, that forged this dominion. He scanned the silent thousands. And you cowards, you would see it undone. You cheer for a female who unwraps 1,000 years of tradition, all for the sake of a human pet. Silence, traitor, Tarek growled, his hand instinctively moving to the hilt of his pulse rifle. No, a new voice commanded. Syraxa. She stood on the high steps of the imperial palace. She was not in armor. She wore the simple, black robes of a stateswoman, the first time she had ever appeared so before her people. The fireclaw crown was the only armor she wore, a stark, red and black statement on her brow. Her face was open, and in its lack of ceremonial masking, it held more power than Tarek's armor or Mara's law. Let him speak, she commanded, her voice calm and absolute. Let the poison be drawn. Let the entire Dominion hear the truth, from its very source. A terrible, broken-toothed smile cracked Veshek's face. The truth, you want the truth. Empress. He turned, playing to the recording drones that broadcast his final moments to every corner of the Dominion. The truth is that I was right. Our way, our strength, it is dying, and this Aegis Directorate you found in my files. They are the future. They are human. Yes, he shrieked, as the crowd gasped at the admission. But they are humans who understand. They understand power control. They have no emotion, no sentiment, no weakness. And what was their price? Malgor, Syrax's voice cut through his tirade, sharp as a plasma scalpel. The price was nothing, Veshek laughed, a harsh, dry, coughing sound. The price was a single, insignificant tool. He raised his cuffed hands and pointed, a shaking, accusatory finger. He was not pointing at Syraxa. He was pointing at Ari, who stood in the shadow of a great pillar on the palace steps, just behind his empress. Just the pilot, Veshek shrieked, his voice breaking. The warden key. They built him, and they wanted him back. They would have given us everything. Control of the FTL currents. Control of all trade. Of all war. And all I had to do was deliver the one, lingering survivor of their failed, forgotten experiment. He was confessing, but he was also planting a seed. In his final, spiteful act, he was not just accepting his doom. He was exposing his allies, attempting to burn their house down with his... The Aegis Directorate. Empress. That is your new enemy. They are everywhere. They are in everything you have not won. You have just... His voice failed. He had emptied himself of words and venom. He collapsed, his body folding, until he was kneeling on the cold stone, a puppet with its strings, finally, irrevocably cut. He has spoken his own sentence, Marathol declared, his voice ringing with the finality of ancient law. He is Boinkar, Oathbreaker. His house is forfeit. His life is forfeit. The crowd held its collective breath. They waited for the hiss of Tarek's rifle, for the snap hiss of a ceremonial blade. They waited for blood. Syraxa looked at the pathetic, kneeling figure. She looked at Ari, who met her gaze from the shadow of the pillar. She looked at her people. No, she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried to every ear. He is broken. His house is dissolved. His lands, his fleets, his titles, all are seized by the throne. The crowd murmured. This was law. But his life, she continued, is not mine to take. He will not be a martyr. He will not be a symbol for other traitors to rally around. He will be nothing. She turned her gaze back to the kneeling man. He is sentenced to the gray exile. He will live his remaining days on the silent moon of Kar, the very world that once bore his name. He will have no one to speak to, and no one to hear his... He is... forgotten. It was a fate worse than death for a Volari, a living death. Absolute anonymity, the ultimate, crushing judgment. Veshek did not even look up. He just knelt, trembling, as Tarek Sora cuffed him in transport bonds. The great game was over. The political firestorm, however, was just beginning. The next day, Syraxa stood again in the Hall of Judgment, this time before the assembled Council of Elders. They were not her inquisitors. They were her cowed, attentive students. House Karzul is gone, she declared, her voice echoing from the resonant basalt. Its territories, its fleets, its vast resources are now the property of the Dominion, of all of us. The holographic map flared to life, the same one Veshek had used to challenge Ari. The Fuse Doctrine, as proposed by my bond candidate, Ari Mercer, will be the new law. She pointed to the lesser houses, the ones Veshek had bled dry. The Karzul lands will be redistributed. The client houses are, from this day, Free. They will have autonomy. They will have direct trade routes to the core. The throne guarantees it. It was a revolution. She was not just winning the war. She was enacting Ari's peace. She was pulling the stones from the bottom of the wall. Furthermore, she continued, we are not alone. The human blocks are real. They are fractured, disorganized, and vulnerable. To us. And, as we have seen, to others. She looked to Ari, who stood at the base of her throne, not as a prisoner in the judgment ring, but as a recognized advisor. Ari Mercer has proposed a new compact. Ari stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but it filled the hall with a new kind of authority. I propose the Kestrel Compact. The elders shifted. The name of that filthy backwater station, spoken as law in this hallowed hall. It is a start, Ari said, his voice firm. A treaty. To protect the buffer zones, the people who live between our empires, the civilians. No more anvil plays. No more honor shields. No more Kestrel hostages. A treaty with humans, a conservative elder scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. A treaty for people, Ari countered, his gaze unwavering. And to prove our mutual intent, I also propose a joint tribunal, a human Valari investigative body. We will look back. We will investigate the border incidents. We will investigate Cygnus Delta. We will find the truth, all of it, and we will build a future on it, not on suspicion, but on fact. The proposal was breathtaking. It was not a surrender. It was not a conquest. It was a partnership. The Dominion debated. For days, the public feeds were ablaze. The old guard was furious. A human dictating terms. This is weakness. He has softened her. But then, the other images began to circulate, the ones Tarek's intelligence agents had so carefully leaked. The image of the Crimson Crown, its weapons cold, holding its fire over the two helpless Karzul ships. The image of the Empress, choosing mercy, and the images of Ari in the combat ring, his staff dripping with the blood of a champion. Ari on the bridge, his face bloody, having just outflown a dreadnought fleet. Ari in the Hall of Judgment, his body vibrating as he weaponized the very sound of the chamber. The narrative shifted. The graffiti was becoming art. He is not weak, a popular broadcaster argued. He is clever. He fights like a warden. She is not sentimental, another countered. She is wise. She rules with restraint, a strength Veshek never understood. The tide, slowly, but with the unstoppable force of a social current, was turning. The Crimson Crown returned to Outpost Kestrel. It was the strangest, most surreal homecoming of Ari's life. He walked down the same grimy, familiar docking corridor he had been dragged up in chains. This time, he was flanked by Tarek Sora and two Crimson Blades. The station was silent. The miners, the smugglers, the refugees. They lined the walls, their faces a mix of awe, terror, and confusion. He was no longer Ari, the scrap hauler. He was not Ari Mercer, the summoned. He was something else entirely, a myth they had watched on a broadcast. At the end of the corridor, by the main airlock, stood Ren, the docking master. He was wringing his hands, his face pale. Ari, Ren squeaked, his voice cracking. I mean... I saw the broadcasts. Your Highnesses, Lord Bondmate, Mr. Pilot. What in the seven hells do I call you? Ari stopped. He looked at Tarek. The massive Valari warrior just raised one stone-like eyebrow, his expression unreadable. Ari turned back to Ren. A slow, tired, genuine grin spread across his face. Ren, Ari said, and he clasped his old friend's shoulder, a gesture so normal it was revolutionary. You call me Ari, and if anyone else asks, You tell them I am just the potato driver. I just got a promotion." Ren stared for a second. Then a choked, gasping, relieved laugh burst out of him. The tension on Kestrel did not just break. It shattered. The station, as one, breathed again. That night, Ari was not in his gilded cage. He was in Saraxa's private quarters on the Crimson Crown. They were vast, but austere. A desk, a cot, a meditation mat, and one massive viewport, identical to the one in his guest quarters, looking out on the same familiar field of junk. She was standing at it, her back to him. The Fireclaw crown was not on her brow. It sat on her desk, a silent, heavy weight. She wore the simple black robes. She was, for a moment, just Saraxa. "They cheered for you, on Kestrel," she said, her voice quiet. "They fear me, but they love you." "They do not love me," Ari said, walking to stand beside her, leaving a respectful, charged distance between them. "They are relieved. They are relieved the wolf did not eat them, and that the sheepdog turned out to be a friend." She smiled, a small, sad curve of her lips. "A potato driver. I heard you were listening in." "I always listen to you, Sparks," she said, her voice dropping. The old name a comfort and a complication. They stood in silence for a long time, watching the debris of Kestrel glitter in the starlight. "I was afraid," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. "When?" he asked. "On the bridge, facing the fleet in the hall. When Veshek's men charged—" "Yes," she said. "But that was fear for my throne, for my people. That is the fear of an empress." She turned to him, and her black eyes were not the cold void of a ruler. They were deep, dark, and frightened. "In the labyrinth," she said. "In the hangar. When I gave you the weapons. When I told you to choose." She looked down at her hands. "I wanted you to burn him. I wanted you to kill him. I wanted the vengeance I dreamed of, every night, since I was a cub hiding in your cargo hold. And I was terrified that you would. I was terrified that I would turn you into me, into him. I was so afraid I would lose the one person in this galaxy who is not broken. I was afraid I would lose you." The confession hung in the air, heavier than any crown. "You did not lose me," Ari said, his voice hoarse. "But you are wrong. I am broken. Saraxa. I have been broken since Cygnus Delta. Ari." "No," he said. "It is my turn. You confessed. I confess. That disaster. It haunts me. Not just the memory, the noise, the feeling, the Aegis key in my spine. It screamed that day. It screamed when I saw Veshek's code. I am still running. I am afraid that one day I will stop being Ari, and I will just be the key, a thing they use." She reached out. Her hand did not touch him, but hovered in the space between them, trembling. "You are not a weapon, Ari Mercer," she said, her voice fierce. "You are my pilot. You are my strategist. You are my conscience. You are Sparks." He looked at her hand, and slowly, he met it, his fingers brushing hers. The contact was electric, a jolt of warmth in the cold. The door chimed. The moment shattered. They pulled apart as if they had been burned. "Enter." Saraxa's voice was instantly, icily, imperial. Elder Marathol entered. He held a small, polished stone box. He bowed, his ancient face acknowledging nothing of the tension he had interrupted. "Your Majesty, bond candidate," he said. "The Council has ratified the Kestrel Compact. The Tribunal is formed. The law is changed. Thanks to you both." He stepped forward. "And, as such, the Council has formally recognized the completion of all 3 trials: combat, strategy, survival, You have won them all. Ari Mercer, you have satisfied the law. He opened the box. Inside, on a bed of crimson velvet, was not a jewel, but an amulet. A heavy disk of gray, meteoric iron carved with the double sigil of the Empress's line and the constellation of the Warden. The Keshtar amulet, Mara said, his voice soft with reverence. The highest honor of the Dominion. It is not just a title. It is a vow. The bondmate becomes life bond. A partner in war, a partner in life. Your voice will be her voice. Your life. Her life. He held it out to Ari. This was it. The end of the game. The final, political, and personal move. Ari looked at the amulet. He looked at Saraxa. Her face was an impassive mask, but her eyes were wide, waiting, terrified. He put out his hand and stopped, just an inch from the amulet. I am honored, Elder, Ari said, his voice careful. More than you know. He met Saraxa's gaze. But I cannot accept this. Mara's face fell. Saraxa's heart stopped. Not yet, Ari added quickly. The compact. The tribunal. It is not enough. Ari, what are you doing? Saraxa's voice was a dangerous, panicked whisper. Using my leverage, he whispered back, a faint, wry smile touching his lips. He turned to Mara. The compact protects the border worlds, but I want one more clause. A clause that protects the people on Kestrel. Not as a Dominion protectorate, as an independent station, a haven, a refugee center, guaranteed by both our peoples in perpetuity. I will not accept a title until my old home is safe, permanently. Marathol stared. The human was negotiating. He was using the highest, most sacred bond of the Empire as hostage, for a ball of junk and refugees. Mara threw back his head and laughed, a deep, rich, honest sound that shocked Ari. You are Valari after all, he boomed. You negotiate like a Karzul very well, Ari Mercer. The clause will be added. Thank you, Ari said, a wave of relief washing over him. Now, Mara said, his smile still in his eyes. Will you accept, The door slammed open. It did not chime. A comms officer, a young subaltern, ran into the room, his face pale with panic, his armor rattling. He did not bow. Empress. What is it? Saraxa snapped. The moment of peace violently destroyed. The tribunal, the officer gasped. The human delegation. We were running deep scans on Veshek's data, the Aegis Directorate files, the ones he confessed to. It is confirmed, Your Majesty, the officer said, his voice shaking. The corporation that funded Veshek, the one that set the FTL trap, it is the same entity. The one that launched the test at Cygnus Delta. The one that destroyed the Warden Squadron. Ari felt the blood drain from his face. The final, horrible confirmation. But that is not it, Your Majesty, the officer said, trembling. Speak, Sub-Commander. Tarek's voice boomed from the doorway. He had been standing guard, listening. Veshek. He was not their only agent, the officer choked out. He was just a buyer, a pawn. They had a deeper contact, a handler, someone. Inside, the Valari government. Someone who managed him. We found their signal key, their Aegis broadcast signature. Who? Saraxa whispered, her hand moving to the crown on her desk. Which house? Who is it? The comms officer looked up, his eyes wide with a terror that went beyond treason. Your Majesty, the signal. It is not coming from a house. It is not coming from the human sector. We triangulated it. The signal. It is coming from this palace. A new Impossible cold settled in the room. But that is impossible, Ari said. Veshek was the traitor. Who else is left? The comms officer swallowed, his gaze flicking to the elder, who stood frozen, the Keshtar amulet still in his outstretched hand. The handler's signal key. Your Majesty. It is not Veshek's. It is not a standard Aegis code. It is an ancient Valari code. An elder code. It is broadcasting. From the council chambers. It is the personal, encrypted signature of Elder Marathol. The accusation hung in the room, like a death sentence. A physical, cold thing. It is the personal signature of Elder Marathol. The comms officer was shaking, his eyes locked on the ancient, gray-robed figure. Tarek Sora moved with a speed that was terrifying, his pulse rifle snapping up, its glowing red sight bar painting a target on Mara's chest. "Do not," Tarek growled, his voice a low vibration of murder. "Move!" Marathol froze. He did not look at Tarek. He did not look at the Empress. He simply, with agonizing slowness, looked at the Keshtar amulet in his hand, and then at Ari. His face was a mask of unreadable, profound confusion. Mara, Saraxa's voice was a broken whisper. It was the single most devastating blow she could have received. Not the fleets, not the armies, not Veshek, but him. The man who had been her father's advisor. The man who was the living embodiment of the law. "It is a lie," Mara said, his voice a dry rasp. "Your Majesty, The signal is absolute, Empress," the comms officer stammered. "It is an elder code. It is his..." Ari's mind was racing. It was not terror. It was calculation. The Aegis key, the FTL trap, the acoustics in the judgment hall, the signature. It was a pattern. "Wait," Ari said, his voice cutting through the tension. Tarek's head snapped toward him, annoyed. "This is not the time, pilot." "No, wait," Ari insisted, walking between Tarek's rifle and Marathol. He put his hand on the barrel of the gun and gently, firmly, pushed it down. Tarek, shocked, allowed it. "Ari, what are you doing?" Saraxa demanded. "This is wrong," Ari said, his pilot's mind, his warden sense, seeing the current under the waves. "It is too perfect. It is too clean." He looked at Mara. You were the one who authenticated my 7 values broadcast. You were the one who invoked the Boinkar against Veshek. You hate him. Why would you be his handler?" "It makes no sense," Mara whispered, his hands trembling. "Of course it does not," Ari said, turning to the comms officer. "The signature. Show it to me. Not the translation. The raw code." The officer, panicked, threw it onto the main console. A flickering, complex string of green and Valari red. Ari stared at it. It was elegant. It was precise. And it had a flaw. A tiny, repeating, mathematical echo. The same echo he had felt in the Harbinger simulator, just before the malfunction. "That," Ari said, pointing. "That is not an elder code. That is an Aegis key, disguised as an elder code. It is a frame. It is graffiti." "What?" Saraxa was on her feet, rounding the console. "It is a frame job," Ari said, the full, horrifying picture slamming into his mind. Veshek was not their pawn. He was their distraction, their noise. We were all so busy fighting him. We never looked at the handler. And now, just as we win, just as the tribunal is formed, they plant this. A perfect, clean piece of evidence to do one thing. He looked at Saraxa. To isolate you. To make you doubt the one man, the last man, you trust. To break your legal foundation. Just before they make their real move. As if his words were a summons. The Crimson Crown's primary alert klaxon blared. not the red alert of an attack. The blue alert of a Priority 1 Alpha transmission. An ultimatum. Empress, a new voice yelled from the comm station. An external broadcast. All channels, Dominion-wide, and human block-wide. They are on screen. The main view screen, which had been showing Kestrel's junk field, went black. And then, a new symbol appeared. Not the gauntlet of Karzul. It was a simple, gray and blue circle. The logo of the Aegis Directorate. A voice spoke. It was not human, not Volari. It was a synthesized, cold, corporate voice. Sexless, emotionless, absolute. To the Empress Saraxa of the Volari Dominion, we are the Aegis Directorate. The instability on your border is concluded. The asset Veshek has been liquidated. We congratulate you on your efficiency. Saraxa's face was a mask of pure, cold stone. Who are you? We are your predecessors. We created the Warden Key. We are the masters of the FTL currents. The weapon you encountered was ours. The pilot you harbor is ours. The voice continued, its cold, passionless cadence 1,000 times more terrifying than Veshek's rage. You have in your possession one Project Warden Unit 734. He is designated Ari Mercer. He is our property. You will return him to us. Go to hell, Tarek growled. A state of being we do not recognize. This is our one and only offer. Surrender the asset, or the Volari capital system will be placed under permanent FTL suppression. As of now, you have 10 standard hours to comply. We await your decision. The screen went black. The room was silent. Marathol, vindicated and horrified, sank into a chair. Tarek was staring at the black screen as if he could kill it with his eyes. Saraxa looked at Ari. Ari was not looking at her. He was staring at the raw code of the Aegis ultimatum. He was comparing it to the code from Veshek's files, the code from the FTL trap. He saw it. A watermark, a neural signature key, buried in the base code. It was familiar. My God, he whispered. He ran a diagnostic. He put his own hand on the console, linked his own. Faint biosignature. Match found. Ari, Saraxa's voice was a whisper. It is me, he said, his voice hollow. He looked up, his face pale, his eyes wide with a terrible, final understanding. It is all me. They did not just create the Warden Project. They created this weapon, this FTL suppression algorithm, and they built it around one thing, a living key. A master key that could control it, modulate it, be it. He tapped his own temple. They did not just give me a tool. They turned my entire nervous system into that key. Cygnus Delta was not just a test. It was a field trial. And I survived. I am the only one. My mind is the master key to their entire network. That is what they want back. Not a pilot. The algorithm. The key to controlling the galaxy. Then we fight, Tarek said. We find them. We burn them out. We can't, Ari said, shaking his head. They are not a fleet. They are not a house. They are a shadow. An idea. A corporation. They do not fight. They just turn off the lights. And they will do it. They will bottle up your homeworld until it dies. Then what? Saraxa asked, her voice tight with a cold, new fear. We give you to them? No, Ari said. A strange calm was settling over him. The fear was gone. The running was over. He finally saw the end of the current. We do not run. We do not fight. We end it. He looked at Saraxa. This network they built, it is a web, and I am the spider. I am the one who built it, even if I did not know it. And if I built it, I can unbuild it. How? Marathol asked, his voice sharp. A broadcast, Ari said. A kill switch. A command. From the master key, me. I can send a signal that will unmake the entire algorithm. It will cascade through their network and permanently fry every FTL trap in the galaxy." "Then do it," Tarek urged. "There is a cost," Ari said, his voice quiet. He finally looked at Saraxa. "This is not a normal broadcast. It has to come from the source. My warden nerves. It will require a massive power surge. It will be a one-way trip. The feedback loop will be catastrophic. It will burn it out. All of it." The meaning landed. "It will destroy your ability," Saraxa whispered, her face pale. The warden sense. "You're piloting. Your sixth sense." "Yes," Ari said. "It will fry every Aegis graft in my head. I will be just a man. I will lose a part of myself. But we will all be free." "No," she said, her voice shaking. "I will not let you. We will find another way. We will fight." "You can't," he said, gently. "You know we can't. They are not a fleet. They are an idea. And this is the only way to kill it." "I do not need that power," she cried, her voice cracking. "The Empress gone. I do not care about the FTL currents if the price is losing you." He stepped forward. And this time, he did not stop. He took her hands. They were cold. "Losing me," he said, and smiled. That same, tired old, scrap-hauler grin. "Sparks, you will be saving me. From being a key. From being a ghost. From running. I will just be Ari." He squeezed her hands. "Besides," he whispered, "you taught me something. You taught me that true strength is knowing when to stop, knowing when not to fire. This is how I stop. This is how I end the war. My war." She looked at him, her black eyes swimming. She wanted to argue, but she could not. He was using her own lesson against her. She nodded. Once. A single, heartbroken jerk. "How? The FTL core chamber. On the crown. It is the only broadcaster strong enough." The core chamber was a temple of power, a vast, vibrating cathedral of conduits and energy. At its center was the containment field of the jump drive. Ari was at a terminal, his temple port jacked in for the last time. At the blast door, Tarek, Marathol, and Saraxa stood guard. "It is ready," Ari's voice came over the comm. It sounded far away. "I am in the network. It is so vast. I can feel all of them. Every trap. Every node. They are waiting." "Do it, Ari," Saraxa whispered. "Here I go." Saraxa. "Sparks. I know, Ari," she whispered back. "I know. Be safe." He laughed. A faint, static-filled laugh. "That is the one thing I cannot be. Here it is." He hit the command. The core did not explode. It shrieked. A single, pure, impossible note of blue-white light. In the chamber. Ari arched back in his chair, his body rigid. He screamed. A silent scream, lost in the data stream. He was feeling an entire galaxy's worth of weaponry, unmaking itself inside his head. Across the Dominion and the human blocks, 1,000 hidden Aegis nodes flared and died. The FTL suppression network collapsed. The great weapon was broken. On the bridge of the Aegis command station, 1,000 light-years away, an alarm blared, and then went silent. Their power was gone. On the crown, the shriek stopped. The FTL core slammed back to a stable. Green hum. In the chamber. Ari fell forward, ripping the jack from his temple. He slumped to the deck, unconscious. A thin line of blood trickled from his temple port and his nose. He was just a man. Weeks later. The Hall of Judgment. It was not a courtroom. It was a hall of state. Saraxa stood before the full Council of Elders and the new human delegates of the Kestrel Compact. The Aegis Directorate. Their power shattered. Their secrets revealed by the tribunal had imploded. Their leaders were in chains. Veshek was on a silent moon, beginning his long exile. Ari walked to the dais. His step was sure. He wore a simple, black Valari tunic. He looked up at Saraxa. His eyes were clear and quiet. He could no longer feel the currents. He could just see the woman in front of him. She held up the Keshtar amulet. "The rending K," she declared, her voice ringing. "The life debt is paid. It is finished." The council murmured. She looked at Ari. Her eyes were not the eyes of an empress, but of a partner. "This is the Keshtar vow. It is not for a debt of the past. It is for a promise of a shared future." In front of her entire dominion, she placed the heavy, iron amulet around his neck. The hall erupted. 1 year later, Outpost Kestrel was unrecognizable. It was now the Kestrel-Valar Joint Academy of Navigation and Diplomacy. It was clean, bright, and bustling with human and Valari cadets. In a lecture hall, Ari stood before a class. He wore a simple instructor's tunic. He looked rested. He looked at peace. "Lesson 1, he was saying, a wry smile on his face, "is survival. Lesson 2 is keeping a cool head when the universe is on fire. Now, who can tell me what a potato driver is?" A few Valari cadets looked confused, while the humans grinned. A sleek, crimson and black shuttle docked at the station's main viewport. Saraxa stepped out, unarmored, in a simple, black uniform. She walked to the back of the lecture hall, unseen by Ari, and leaned against the wall, watching him teach. A genuine, warm smile was on her face. The class ended. The cadets filed out. Ari erased the whiteboard. "A good lecture, Professor," she said, her voice warm. He turned and smiled. "Empress, I thought you were on the homeworld." "I was," she said, walking to him. She linked her arm with his. "But the comm antenna on the palace is acting up. The signal is terrible." She looked up at him, her black eyes teasing. "So I figured I would come get my expert. Teacher, when you get home tonight, remember to use my crown to fix the antenna," he finished, laughing. They walked out of the lecture hall together. 2 people. No longer a key and a cub. No longer a ghost and an empress. Just Ari and Saraxa. Finally home.